It's the Hyatt Regency in Yekaterinburg, host to the 2020 Candidates Tournament, the first major event of the year for these chess players as they are determining who will face Magnus Carlsen later on this year for the title of World Chess Champion. I am Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez here with legendary GM Yasser Seirawan.
Pleasure, Alejandro. Namaste. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Today in Chess, as we pick up the round one of the candidates, and the players have just brought some incredible preparation to their games as we get into our show.
It's absolutely explosive. Let's take a look at who is participating in this event. First of all, we are headlined by our very own Magnus Carlsen, the first seed of the event by a solid margin after his impressive victory in Vachier-Lagrave. Second rating favorably, Liren, the only two 2800s of the tournament, followed by the two Russians, Alexander Grischuk and Nepomniachtchi, followed by Vachier-Lagrave. Very controversial, his way of getting into the tournament, but he's there, the Frenchman, finally getting his shot into the candidates. He will be followed by Giri. Wang will be the 7th seed, and of course it'll be another controversial pick, Kirill Alexyenko, as the wild card of the event. Certainly the lowest rated player, if you see, considerably lower rated than his opponents, but he's young, he's prepared, and he will definitely be the wild card of the event. Let's move on to the format. It's a double round robin, 14 rounds of chess, a long event by today's standards, and also a long time control. If you're a classical fan, this is your event. 100 minutes for the first 40 moves, 50 minutes for the next 20. That means that at move 40, you get another 50. And at move 60, you get another 15 minutes.
3 time controls. That indeed is a classical time control. So long. And 500,000 euros for prize fund. Not bad, Alejandro.
And as different from other candidates, they won't be able to offer each other draws before Black's 40th move. So we will have no short draws in this event by agreement. Of course, 3-move repetition still allowed, but that will be the exception. Let's take a look at the schedule. Of course, we have round one underway right now, and get used to this. 3 rounds of chess and a break day. That will be the setup of the event. It's a very long tournament, therefore the players will get plenty of rest days. You can see that the green bars right there. And well, it's a long event, but we are already underway. So let's go to Grandmaster Maurice Ashley that has some action for us.
Indeed, there has been tremendous action so far in this event. What a tournament. The world watching this incredible event with 8 players trying to figure out who's going to play the world champion, Magnus Carlsen. And we've got some hungry players, 2 of them here, Giri from Holland and Nepomniachtchi from Russia. And this game, absolutely a wild one, as Nepo, after the move B3, played bishop to B4, wondering after B takes, why couldn't he play rook to A3? This piece looks like it's going to come under heavy fire, and it did after the move queen A5. This knight is under pressure. E5 might happen at any moment to trap the bishop. Bishop E2, and then an exchange sacrifice with rook takes C3, king to F1, and after B4 defending the rook, G5, trying to open up this king side. A smashing move indeed, and after E5, he did capture back the exchange and takes on F6. And now the move queen B1, hitting this square on H7 as well. There's a passed pawn in white's position. Absolutely crazy chess. And another game that started off wild was this one between Vachier-Lagrave, the Frenchman, who barely got into this tournament, had the last minute, versus a favorite in this event, Magnus Carlsen. And after queen E7, E5 takes, and then a smashing knight takes on F7. What a wild move. You would think this one would be maybe a knockout punch. The cool, calm E4 in reply, saying, do your worst. I'm not afraid of any of your disco checks. Knight D6 check, king to H8, knight takes on B7. The game calmed down considerably, and if we jump down to this point, the move C5, a little bit unexpected, a reasonable move. Maybe not the most cantankerous fighting move, because here, rook takes D1, bishop C5, queen to F2, and it looks like there potentially could be some trades. Will he or won't he? Bishop takes on E3 or bishop D6. In fact, he has played the move bishop to D6, keeping the tension alive. So still a lot to play for in this one. And of course, Magnus Carlsen wants to win this event. He is, first of all, the #1 seed, significantly so, rated at 2842. and the only player in this event who has played for a world championship title, having famously tied Magnus Carlsen in 12 games of Classical and only losing in the tiebreak in the last world championship. This number 2 ranked player on the planet, we know he can be a dominant player. We saw him do that fabulous result back in the Sinquefield Cup where he won 7 games in a row to start the event, one of the best performances in tournament history. And his form, it seems to be back, as he did just win Tata Steel ahead of Magnus Carlsen in January. He is absolutely dangerous and could be indeed the dominant favorite in the field. A lot of Chinese players will say, well, wait a minute, we got Ding Liren on hand. Let's not get out of hand. On the other hand, his opponent, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he is clearly one of the best in the world, certainly deserving to be in such an event, but he did not qualify through the natural methods, only getting here because Timur Ryabov of Azerbaijan decided he did not want to play due to all the health concerns that is bothering the world at the moment. But he is certainly a deserving player. He has been in the world's elite for the longest time. He has won his big events. He won the 5th Sinquefield Cup ahead of all the best in the world. So he is absolutely a player that can show he can be here. He deserves to be here. In terms of strength level, will he prove it as he's gotten this opportunity to be able to play? The lifetime score, well, not so bad. Again, Maxime showing that he can play against the world's elite. 5 wins, 6 losses, and 22 draws. Practically a statistical dead heat as far as these two are concerned, and this game is showing it as a very close game at the moment. Exciting games to start the tournament? Absolutely, that's what we'd expect from a candidate.
Thank you, Maurice. For me, Alejandro, it really feels like for this round especially, preparation is dominating the opening play here.
And it will be something that you will have to see for the following rounds. Before we get into that, let's take a look at how they got into this tournament. Exactly. All of the candidates, all 8 of them. Of course, back when Fabi lost to Magnus Carlsen in 2018, we already knew he was seeded into the next candidates. The top 2 finishers of the Chess World Cup 2019 immediately qualified. Those were Timur Ryabov as the winner and Ding Liren as the runner-up. Of course, we've mentioned Timur Ryabov has dropped out of the tournament and has been replaced by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Top finishers from the Grand Swiss, the top finisher, that is Wang. The top 2 finishers from the Grand Prix series, that is 2 Russians, Nepomniachtchi and Alexander Grischuk. The highest average FIDE rating of the previous year, Anish Giri. And the wild card chosen by the organizer, with the caveat that it couldn't just be any wild card they wanted. They had to be somebody that was rated over 2,700 at the time of invitation and had to finish just outside of the winner circle in one of these tournaments, either the Grand Swiss or the Grand Prix. And there was only 2 people that would fulfill those requirements, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave or Russian Kirill Alexyenko. And of course, the Russian Federation went with Kirill. The pairings for today, we've already talked about Maxime Vachier-Lagrave against Fabiano Caruana. Meanwhile, Alexander Grischuk is facing off against Kirill Alexyenko, Ding Liren against Wang Hao, and Anish Giri against Nepomniachtchi. These pairings that you see are not completely random. They are randomized, but they also ensure that compatriots do not face off in the last rounds.
Exactly. You just want to avoid any kind of situation where there could be any question of collusion or compromise play. So that's very, very nice. And again, what a way to start the tournament. It's very exciting, Maurice.
I agree. And one of the great things about events with disparities in ratings, we see number 1, Fabiano Caruana at 2840, 42 was it? And then you have at the bottom a player who's not even 2,700. We have to go way back in time to remember a time when a player is in the candidates, the world's elite, trying to decide who plays against the world champion, and they're below 2,700. That's just seemingly unimaginable. You really have to go back decades in order to find that in this kind of format. But when that happens, you find exciting chess abounds. It's sort of like the Tata Steel tournament I mentioned. One of the great things about Tata Steel is there's always a mix of the elite and lower-rated players. You live in the country, Yasser. Yes. You've seen this tournament up close, and you know it's always exciting. People going after points. They see you a lower-rated player, they're thinking, you're a point, baby. I'm not today. You can't be the guy I let off the hook. We might draw other players, as you see happen in the super elite tournaments when the best of the best play each other. But when you have lower rated players, I got to get some points. And that seems to bring out the feeding frenzy in the top players.
Although that doesn't always turn out well for them. Remember, Jordan Van Forest this year, one of the lowest rated players. He had a fantastic event. He just went on a roll, beating a lot of the top players, proving that it's not easy to beat any of these players, even if they're not quite 2,700.
And let's be fair to Kirill. When he was invited, he actually was a 2,700.
Right.
He slipped, as you had mentioned.
He just slipped. There were two players in the candidates that were actually in Gibraltar playing in that event. Both Maxime and Kirill were participating.
Okay.
To be honest, I was also playing, and they didn't feel like they were candidates. They were just in the middle of the pack.
Okay.
They
didn't distinguish themselves.
They didn't distinguish. Sorry, three. Wang was also playing, but he was near the top the entire event.
Indeed.
But Maxime, he made a few draws.
Right.
People saw him as a target to make quick draw by preparation.
Right.
He wasn't really able to get out of it. Of course, opens are a very different beast than a candidates in a closed event.
A double round robin
But I wanted to ask you about that.
Yes.
You mentioned preparation.
Yes.
Preparation being so key going into this.
Yes.
And if you look at the Instagram of Anish Giri, preparation. I mean, every day the guy was training. He has secret seconds. Maxime, he didn't know he was playing.
Right.
He took a vacation to New York. He was chilling with his friends.
Right.
How is this going to affect the tournament?
Except these guys are so professional. That's what they're doing, 12 months of the year. I mean, is preparation. I mean, he got the ticket just like weeks ago, and he said, I'm in.
I'm in. Oh, definitely.
I mean, I may not have been preparing as long as these guys, but I'll definitely play. I just wanted to say also, in the Top to Steel, we mentioned 7 out of 7, the Sinquefield Cup, but look what Fabi did in that tournament. He scored 6.5 out of 7 at the end, which was an amazing finish. It was just incredible.
Yes.
It was just, Fabi at his best. Maurice, you got Fabi's game on your board.
Yes, and just making that point about MVL, Alejandro, you just said, the thing is, yes, he wasn't able to prepare specifically for these players. But these players weren't able to prepare specifically for him either.
Right.
You can imagine all the work these players put in to prepare for Timor and then found out, wait, we're not playing against him?
Right.
How much work they dug into his repertoire, all those hours and days of work to dig into playing against this one player.
And it's almost such a pity because Maxime is so predictable. If you had to say one of many weaknesses of these players, Maxime specifically, that would be his preparation is so narrow.
Najdorf,
Grunfeld, and E4.
Which, by the way, helps him, if you think about it also, because he comes in saying, that's what I play. I'm always boning up. I'm always keeping my positions as clean as possible. So I got my latest novelties ready for you guys. You weren't preparing against me at all, and all of a sudden you got to look back at all the preparation to find what he does. Again, to say, okay, has he discovered anything new in this his favorite stuff? So I think it's a two-way street here, whether or not the preparation is going to matter. But to me, what's going to really count is form and hunger. I mean, that's what it comes down to in the end. It's form, how well you're playing, and hunger. You can get all the preparation you want, you get all the decent positions you want, but if you're not in form, it doesn't matter. And if you're not as hungry and desperate to win, it doesn't matter. And by the way, let's point out, the rating favorite to win this tournament has not won, did not win the last time, did not win the time before that, did not win the time before that. You have to go back to Magnus Carlsen, who barely hung on and won his tournament in 2013 in London, where he tied Kramnik and won only on a tiebreak. So just because you're the rating favorite, and I know we're going to be picking our favorite soon, but just because you're a rating favorite doesn't mean that you're going to win the tournament.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to be a biased commentary.
Yes,
of course. Let's
be very clear.
But let's go straight into chess. Yasser,
Exactly.
you have Kirill Alexenko's board up.
Yep.
Take me through it.
Well, indeed. This started out as an English, and Alexander Grischuk, the rating favorite. And by the way, Grischuk has had such a storied career. I mean, this is his time. If he doesn't perform at this candidates, he's not going to become a challenger. If you go back 20 years, the guy's been spoken about as a potential challenger for 20 years. I mean, he's really, really that good. He's been in the elite for that long, but in these candidates tournaments, he has not distinguished himself. Now, we have a pretty normal looking position. I do like white space. I do like that white's the one who can occupy the center with d4.
I like how you view this because you said white space, and you might be thinking, white has pawns on c3 and d3. They're a little bit backwards.
Right.
But you kind of see the potential of the position,
Exactly.
right? You see it coming to d4. You see them coming to e4.
This bishop in ambush is going to have this nice diagonal.
Right.
After a move like d4, I'm anticipating that you don't really want to take. If you take, then you open up this bishop. I'm thinking that black is going to just step back and say, okay, go ahead and occupy as much space as you want. And I'm thinking that, well, you know, I've got some ideas here. There's some potential on the light squares on the king side. Can imagine a bishop posting up. So it feels a little bit of an advantage, but black's solid.
Yasser, we haven't done commentary together in a
Let's
while. We haven't had our fights in a bit. But I got to say, the very first game you decide to look at is in English. What a shocker! What a surprise! Like, let's put the very
English player.
The very first game. That game is so quiet.
I'm gonna defend my co-commentator. It was 3 out of 4 on the English. There are 3 English openings today.
Hello.
So
Okay, but hello. Could we please at least look at one that's on fire?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I mean, we've dug into a little bit already, but I'd like to hear your insights on this one, which I agreed was in English as well. I mean, to start off, okay, but not the quiet, sleepy fest you just looked at. This one here, we were mesmerized, guys, by this position. The variations, Alejandro, when I just walked in, you said, Maurice, did you see what's happening? And you started showing me some lines. Let's dig into those lines because this was chaos to start this game.
Indeed.
Well, let's take a look. Let's pull up the Nepomniachtchi game. He's playing with the black pieces against Anish Giri. And this preparation,
it's just so deep.
it was spectacular.
Right.
Let's just be quite honest.
Right.
This is a well-known position before rook c1. If we go to the position before rook c1, this position has been reached before at top-level chess.
Okay.
And rook c1 here is the novelty.
Okay. What was the pre-standard before rook c1?
I want to say it was queen b3.
Yeah. Which sure looks like the most natural move.
You're threatening
eyeballing this pawn.
Bishop takes c4. If the guy doesn't watch out, might win
exactly.
something.
Hello. So rook c1 was the new move, and then instantly the players seemed to just go directly into this very sharp line, Alejandro.
And it was very clear. Anish came very well prepared. But we never know if Nepomniachtchi is prepared. He just plays instantly. It doesn't matter if he knows the position or not.
We've seen Nepo do that many, many times. And here, this move, bishop b4, that looks like a starting piece sacrifice that you have to calculate very, very deeply.
Absolutely.
He did spend some time on it, so he was not playing instantly, but we don't know if he was remembering his preparation or he was just calculating at this point. Bishop e5 and f6.
And it's like both players are walking this very, very narrow line.
Yes.
I mean, you just cannot deviate. Any deviations will cost you the game right away. Bishop d4, queen a5.
This moment was very important because the natural move is to guard the knight.
Right.
Yes.
Right? I mean, easy peasy. What if I just play something like queen d2? But no can do because e5 is coming.
And the bishop,
your
is trapped in the middle of the board.
It's just trapped, and the knight is still pinned. So you had to just throw this piece away.
But then you don't throw the piece away, you make an exchange sacrifice, Alejandro.
It's absolutely amazing. You value this bishop so highly, despite the fact that you're kind of constantly worried of the move e5 actually winning the bishop.
Right.
This bishop needs to stay alive because it's the cornerstone of white's attack. And we'll get into that in just a second. I want to point out something very important. A lot of people say chess has been killed by the computers. But if you see this engine evaluation, it was just black. It was -1, -1, wonderful for black. And a lot of the job that seconds have right now is figuring out where the computer is just lying to you.
It's just wrong.
It's just wrong. And this is one of those cases where you go into this position. Rook c1 hadn't been discovered because it's just better for black.
According to the engine.
According to the engine. But if you go deeper, the engine just changes its mind.
Okay. You remind me, Alejandro, of that great game that Fabi beat Nakamura in London, where he sacrificed his queen for 2 pieces.
In the Najdorf.
In the Najdorf. And afterwards, Fabi said, the engine said that this position was equal. Nakamura's preparation said, I studied this. It was supposed to be equal. But Fabi understood with his second, Rustam, and maybe with you as well. I don't know if you were working on him in this position at the time, working with him. But he said, no way this is right. White must be better. Despite being a queen down for 2 pieces, I believe he had maybe a pawn as well. Yeah. He said, nah. This is a boss position for white, and he was absolutely right. The engines were dead wrong. And that's one of the great things about this modern age of being able to work with engines and say, the engine says this, but what does the human think? And comparing in each situation and seeing the human outthink the engine. And this is one of those where you might start counting, hey, I'm up in exchange, right? I got material. No, but that bishop on d4, baby, you better watch out.
And let's continue. How did the game progress? Because we have this position on the board. Rook takes c3. Of course, there's discovers with the rook, so you have to move out of the way. King f1.
This nice, quiet move. The white is basically saying, my rook on h1 is so valuable, I don't want a castle.
Definitely.
My king is going to be parked very nicely on in g2. And, of course, this rook is hanging. And in the meantime, g4, g5 starts to present black real issues.
B4.
Yeah, this wasn't the move that we really, as we came into the studio, that we really looked at. I mean, for definitely for Maurice and I, the position was new, and we were looking at takes. And then you were showing us some incredible lines that started with G5, Alejandro.
G5 would have been the follow-up had Nepomniachtchi taking on C4. And I was looking at things like, for example, castling in this position, and the brilliant idea of King G2.
Yep.
Immediately threatening rook takes h7. Let's just put some dumb move in the position to explain what's going on. E5 is not so dumb. Bishop d7.
Yeah.
You take on h7 with the rook without even wasting time. Taking on h7 with the king. What else can you do? You're getting mated. Queen h1 check. You can't step up because you do get mated after queen h5. King f5 and something like g6 must be made at some point. Yes.
Like in 2?
Like in 2.
After king e4, queen f3 is mate.
Mate.
Sweet.
Pretty nice.
Wait. No, you got to play the f3 mate.
That's given a choice, right?
Right.
You play with a smile when you play.
That does weaken the king. Okay.
So you have to go king g8 after, in this
after
position.
queen h1.
But after g6, it doesn't matter how much material you're down. This king is in a mating net. It's not going to get out. The bishop on d4 is just toast.
Yeah.
Just completely dead.
Yeah.
So this was certainly Giri's preparation. Nepomniachtchi sidestepped it because after b4, this was the first time that the Dutch player took a long think.
He paused now after b5, b4.
The thing about this move that's really important to note is that the d5 pawn is protected by the queen, right? Before, when you were hitting, it's like if you back up one move and you play, let's say you play e5 right now, right? The move e5, bishop takes on c3, and then the d5 pawn is hanging immediately. I think queen takes.
Even queen takes looks been really strong.
Far stronger, actually. Yeah. Queen takes hitting the b5 pawn with check, stopping you from castling. Some rook h7 threats are in the position right here. Queen g8. I mean, just everything's going to drop. So this move b4, the logic of it in Nepo's mind is, my queen's guarding now laterally, so all that is perfectly safe. You can have your exchange back, but you're not going to be better in this position. So this is where Anish decided, okay, I'm going to go for my stuff that I was always going for with the g5 push.
Exactly.
He doesn't see a big difference between the positions with b4 and taking on c4. He says, g5 is necessary. I need to open my bishop. I need to get to your king. e5 played a very practical decision, gives up the material.
Right.
But says, I'm kind of consolidating my position. And let's see, after queen b1, hitting the h7.
Hold on, let's back up because right here was a critical line. C takes on d5 we were looking at as well.
Absolutely, another possibility.
Right, this was a huge option. Get your pawns going up the board, but there is the counter shot that he had to watch out for. Queen takes a2, where black suddenly has two connected passers on the board. Yes, his king is weak. Yes, white has a pass d pawn. Okay, but I got two connected passers. Don't let this game settle down or else I might be the one arguing for something.
And we were looking at king g2, bishop f5, and the determination was that black's okay. I mean, it looked like
looks dangerous. Looks like you could be in trouble, but it looked like black worked his way out of this line. And that's a huge line to note because that motivated him to play the move queen b1.
Precisely.
And queen b1, it attacks h7 and it defends a2, but there is one big elephant in the room here, that pawn on c3.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how many other pawns white collects or white loses. If that pawn on c3 actually becomes dangerous,
and
nothing else will matter.
Yeah, as you can imagine, that if white just was to execute his threat with rook takes h7, again, that pawn on c3 is the elephant in the room, right? I mean, okay, the difference, of course, is black's king is a bit vulnerable, and there is a bishop h5 check as well. In the meanwhile, queen c7 looked like a very decent move to my eyes. You just defend the pawn on h7, Maurice.
Yeah, decent again in these kind of positions, but the move d4 was certainly fascinating.
Whoa.
You couldn't get your two passed pawns one way. Let's get it another way. This move is absolutely insane. If you take on d4 now, which may not be called for, takes, and then rook h7, then we do have this possibility of trading and then rook takes, queen takes, and then bishop f5 and telling white, boy, you better let my king do a march all the way to b2. As you can tell, you could chase that king with some checks. You could check a check all day, but that king is going to start running. Didn't Fabi win a game putting his king on b2 recently in Tata Steel?
Yes, it was a brilliant game against Hugo.
Fantastic.
Absolute genius. So that's what's reflecting in my mind right now. So this kind of thing, he said, okay, I'm back in business. He could have played for the sharp d4, but he opted out and played the super solid queen c7.
But it's a tough position to be in because d4, yes, I want to connect my pawns, but my king is dying. You would think I need to defend.
If I don't take on d4 in that variation that you just gave Maurice, and I go for
does make that big difference because the bishop can't get to f5 here.
Right.
On the other hand, my structure is a bit more solid. It means that I have more diagonal protection.
Exactly.
Does bishop e6 get the job done here?
Maybe even.
I'm a little bit worried about the organization of the king. What is happening here?
I'm worried that there's a pawn on c3.
It's very visual.
I'm not gonna checkmate anybody with a queen and a bishop. I'm hoping for a perpetual here for white.
That's what it feels like as well for me. So maybe a missed opportunity here.
Yeah, actually, I just checked the engine because this position is so chaotic. And this position right here, it says king d8.
Yes.
No, not giving up this pawn. You start checking, you're just going to send it. Don't let the king sit on b8. That's devastating. Nice protection, and these pawns look sexy, boy. Get us rolling down the board. So yeah, d4 could have been, should have been, maybe, but. Okay, we can't live in hypothetical world. We actually do live in hypothetical world when we analyze chess. That could have been a real chance for Nepo.
But let's remember,
c7. Sorry, I just still didn't see anything wrong with it. If you take on d5, I want to play c2.
No, queen c7 looks like a very logical move as well.
Right.
Because at this point, there are so many options. And when you have an engine and it throws out d4, you're kind of tempted.
Right.
But if you look at this from a practical point of view, queen c7 solidifies your position.
Exactly.
It defends h7.
Right.
It puts the queen behind your passed pawn.
Right. And protecting the pawn as it rumbles up the board with, again, c2.
Right.
And I'm thinking that, White's got some issues that he has to, Maurice.
You know, and I'd also say there is some game theory business in chess, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So the issue of what should I play? Should I play the best move or should I play the best move given the situation? And you see your opponent blitzing out moves. Prep. Or you wasted some more time. Oh, more prep. Yeah. You're thinking, okay, what move do I play that's not his number one move and also doesn't lose me the game, but looks like a pretty reasonable move? And a move like queen d4 might be like, maybe the engine said top choice, but queen c7 might be one of those, okay, maybe it's not the wildest, craziest choice that the guy's still ready to play prep against, but it's solid. It makes a lot of sense. It keeps some of the pluses in the position. It eliminates real danger. And so Nepo is one of those gamblers. We know he's a gambler in chess. We've seen him play so fast in sharp positions that you think, well, how can you be playing this fast? And he may not make the perfect move, but he'll make the move that challenges his opponent to find the right answers.
But I want to point something out that I think is very important. Giri comes in and blitzes 19 moves of chess.
Exactly.
And he's currently down on time.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
That is just
when you
crazy.
when you play the weird move, the move you haven't been prepared for. Sometimes that plays a factor. It works against you. That you seem so. I remember once I was playing. It was a World Open. I was playing on one board, and Grandmaster Patrick Wolf. It was a long time ago. I wasn't an IM yet, no GM title, nothing. But I learned something. Patrick Wolf was playing against Albert Chang. This is like '88, guys. Talk about going back in time, right? So they're playing a game, and I'm trying to play my game, and next to me, they're whipping out moves, and Albert is like, he's just dropping moves. And I'm going, what the? You can't even concentrate on your board because these guys are like, you guys have been in this situation before. You guys flying out moves over here. Like, what the heck? So they play all these moves, and Albert's like, prep. And then they get finally to that position where a different move shows up.
Right.
And
Patrick.
And Patrick plays different, and Albert slows down and thinks and thinks and thinks. And it's a long thing. 5 or 6 moves later, he's resigning. So later, Patrick is a friend. I went over to him. I said, what happened? He said, oh, he didn't understand the position. It's like, damn, the guy those moves. Prep. He said, no, better player wins. That's how it works, right? That's the thing. You can be as prepped as you want, but if something funny happens, it almost works against you because you're like, what am I supposed to do about this? You haven't really thought deeply about this position. You're seeing it for the first time, and you start burning time on the clock, and it didn't help you, oddly, paradoxically, that you had prepared so deeply.
And these games are absolutely crucial. When you think about the candidates, such a long tournament, you think, a couple bad rounds you can recover. Yes, you can. Right. But psychologically, it's been historical that if you start slowly in the candidates, it's very, very difficult to recover from it. Last time we had the candidates, Wesley started 0 out of 2. And that was it.
Right.
He did not recover. He did not want to play chess. He did not want to. It was done.
Yeah.
It was done.
The tournament was over really before it even started.
It even started.
Yeah.
So.
And let's take a look at the lifetime scores.
It's really not a lot of games.
No.
Considering the strength of these players.
And how often many of the other players have met each other, this is just a sample.
It's more or less of Nepo not being so active for a couple of years, taking a little bit of a break, coming back into chess. But speaking of chess, let's go to the other games because we have so much action.
If I may,
Sure.
just to jump on, just to accelerate your point and agree with it completely. This format, this 8 players playing a tournament to decide who plays into the world champion. This is a old and new. It's like old wine in new bottles because 2013 is when they restarted this format from the normal match formats they had back in the day. Yasser, you know about this for sure. Matches were played, and then the winners came out of the match. For example, Fischer, he got in that way, and certainly did Karpov, and all the classical stuff, even into modern day. But 2013 is when we had this exact format, 8 players playing a double round robin and going, the winner going to play the world champion. You have to actually go way back in time to the original format, the very first true candidates, Budapest, 1950, when this format was in place. It was a 10-player event, also double round robin, won by 2 players, Bronstein and Boleslavsky, and they had to play a match to decide who went on to play Botvinnik. And then they kept this same format 5 times. Right? 5 times they played it. It was Budapest. Then it was Zurich, 1953. If you haven't read Bronstein's book on this, go out and get it right now. Then it was Amsterdam, 1956. And won by Smyslov. He actually won both of those. And then we jumped to 1959 where Tal played like a monster. That was insane. In Yugoslavia, 3 cities, in fact, Bled and Zagreb and Belgrade. And Tal did something sick, like 10 wins out of 12 games at one point in the tournament, the other 2 being draws. Just truly epic performance by the young man who ended up becoming world champion right after that. And then finally, Curaçao in 1962. So he had those 5. And then they went away from it because of the Curaçao issues.
The collusion.
The collusion that Fischer complained about, Korchner complained that the Soviets were banding together and drawing their games. So they went to match play, and that lasted all the way. And then we got finally back. So we're talking about 62 to 2013 to return to this format. Only one time in those 9 tournaments, this now being the 10th, one time did a player lose round one and win the tournament. You don't want to lose round one. That's the bottom line. This is too critical right out the gate. And the one time, remarkably, was Tao's tournament back in 1959. So the start matters. Don't think it small sample size. We're talking about 9 tournaments already. You've got to start off strong if you want to win in the candidates.
Yeah,
No, I
and by the way, that tall victory that you got to remember, Paul Carez II. That guy,
Paul played real well in that tournament as well.
yeah. Tall goes +10 in that streak, and he's thinking, I'm winning the tournament. No, because Carez is like half a point behind him.
He was dropping woods throughout the whole tournament. He did win by 1.5 points in the end, but those were the heydays of real fighting chess. 28 rounds. Can you imagine, guys? We're doing commentary for 28 rounds in some quadruple round robins.
No.
Insane.
This is 14 rounds.
14 is good enough.
Let's not double down our. What do we got going on in the MVL versus Fabi position, Alejandro? Give us your insights, because after C5, a move that you actually liked, Maurice and I were both of like, hey, this is an isolated queen pawn. Let's play against it. Let's play queen d8. Let's play rook d8. No.
Rook e8. Rook e8 was my
No, I thought it made sense to simplify the position a bit. I'm always scared in this kind of situations that the bishops eventually grow in power.
Yeah, this bishop on b3 especially, right?
Especially, imagine some kind of endgame, a6 is weak, c6 is weak.
Yep.
So I'm trying to figure out a way to simplify as black. Of course, with an engine, you can think, oh, there's actually ways of keeping the tension.
But this is a very forcing move.
It's a forcing move, and it can't be bad.
No.
This is one of those moves, though, the game theory moments, right? Again, which one do you want to play? Do you want to simplify out? Do you want to maintain the tension? Because I really didn't like C5. It felt wrong, C5. It felt like, given what your possibilities could be as black, you should be using your trumps along the e-file with rook e8. Yasser, you went pawn hunting, of course.
Exactly.
As usual, going queen d8. But
well, in fact, you guys came up with an amazing shot. I went queen d8 because, hey, my spidey sense was tingling. I saw 2 pawns on pre. You guys said, okay, you can have that pawn. And I took it. And then after g4, you guys came up with
that wasn't my move. That was the engine's move for sure.
Knight e4. Okay, that's just too beautiful.
Well,
I mean, that was great.
I mean, it is
You should
absolutely
show
great.
the line. You can't just let that sit there. Let the fans understand why this move is so powerful.
Well, the problem is if you take, I've got rook takes f6, and it's actually mate in a 6 as the
Well, if
engine
you take the
showed
rook for starters,
Yep. Queen takes f6,
it's going to be
check.
quicker than 6 in this line.
In this line, because you're not going to g8. You got to block, and oops.
And check.
That's the end of the game.
Coming.
Yeah.
94, monster move.
Monster move.
Absolutely monster.
So don't go pawn hunting, and that was when, pardon me.
But here's what I thought. This is why I thought rook e8 though, because he played c5.
Right.
Rook e8 is more dynamic, and
it keeps the tension. I understand the beauty of rook e8. I also understand why c5 is such a tempting move.
Right.
Well, I mean, at this point, without an engine, you kind of think, I don't know if I'm equal, but c5, I can't be worse. I eliminate a couple of my weaknesses. I think it's a decent move. I totally understand that rook e8 also has its attraction.
But they're both good.
They're both good in different ways, completely different ways.
What's your mindset again? That's why when again people talk about the best move, we're not always looking for the best move. We're looking for the move of the moment.
Yeah.
And also the one that fits our style.
Yes.
I mean, and it clearly, bishop takes c5, or this position. And actually, that was the other thing. It wasn't that Fabi actually had to recapture it once on c5. That kind of blew me away as well, because we were actually studying knight c6.
It's a computer move.
Okay.
It threatens knight d4. You can see that there's a fork. The bishop's not actually defending this because the queen on e2 is currently hanging. There's also ideas of taking the pawn on a5 instead of the pawn on c5.
Which is a tempo, too.
It's a mess, because you also kind of think, if white sidesteps this fork, do I really want to stick my knight on the edge of the board and take that pawn instead of the passed one?
Right.
It doesn't feel logical.
Exactly. No, bishop takes c5, definitely recapturing the pawn. And again, it's something that Fabi does so very well. He calculates deeply, and he foresaw that after queen f2, this is a key moment. This is actually a very, very key moment. A lot of people would be tempted to simply capture the bishop on e3 and say, hey, I've got rid of the two bishops.
It's our understanding that when you have two bishops and you don't, that you try to eliminate those two bishops.
Exactly.
You want to leave your opponent with the knight and the bishop against your two knights.
Exactly.
That is the usual way that you play this kind of situations. But Fabio looks at the position and says, bishop d6, give me those dark squares. I don't care about your pair of bishops. For now, your king is going to feel vulnerable as long as my dark square bishop is alive.
Exactly. And I thought that was a really key insight. That was, for me, an amazing move because I thought bishop takes e3. 9 out of 10 grandmasters, I think that's an automatic move. Get rid of the two bishops.
And, of course, before we catch up with the players, let me remind the viewers that you are able to participate in the conversation. And please do so. We have a phone line open for you guys. Call us at 314-361-5465. And well, we'll be here to answer all of your questions regarding the candidates and everything that surrounds it.
And Alejandro, who's doing our social media?
It's International Master Eric Rosen. If you want to shout out to him on Twitter, he'll be happy to answer your questions as well.
Right.
So this is an interactive show. We'll be happy to answer all kinds of questions and concerns. But meanwhile, Yasser, we have so many more games that we haven't looked at yet. We got to go to some
I just
others.
wanted to
Let's catch up with these guys first.
So knight d3, queen e2. Knight d3, of course, came with a tempo against the queen. Knight to c5, hitting the bishop on b3. And just a quick, what's your judgment?
Position, to me, if I had to evaluate it immediately, I would say it's about equal, but it depends on the following: the dynamic possibilities of the knights in the next couple of moves. Because if white stabilizes, the pair of bishops in an open position should be better than the two knights.
Exactly.
The question is, what can I do with my knights in the next couple of moves that will actually harm white? Not just put a little bit, like harm white. You know, you rid of it, the activity, you capture a pawn, you do something concrete.
Right.
And this is what I want to find out because obviously white's going to retreat the bishop. I don't know if c2 or a2.
He did already?
c2 or a2?
A2.
A2.
A2, okay.
And now comes a key question.
Right.
You are Fabi. You have two knights. There are some ideas with queen e5. There are some ideas with b4. What is the concrete approach? And this is what Fabi is really good at.
Yeah.
What is the concrete approach in this position that actually puts Maxim's position in danger?
Yeah. Pressurizes him. For me, it's definitely the combination of those two moves, b5, b4, and queen e5. As you mentioned, once he played the move bishop d6, playing for the dark squares, well, having said A, you should say B, and I see b4, queen e5. And Maurice, what other games have you got? Because we got to move around. There's a lot of games going on.
Yeah, I'm looking at that game. There's something about this position that concerns me because, as you said, it's a timely issue. A timing issue. When you have knights against bishops, normally you want your knights to be doing something. You don't want them to just look pretty. Looking pretty, I mean, unless they're anchored by a pawn, just sitting there looking pretty, you get chased around. Knights need stable squares. So I just want to make sure the knights have something to do while you got your bishops who don't have to. I mean, they look pretty means don't put anything in my way and let me point these bad boys at your head and blow you up. So Maxime is looking for coordination at all costs. Fabi's looking for timing. I got to get you now before you settle down and go, oh, I just have two bishops. This is gonna restrict you forever. This king does feel the pressure of this bishop on a2. So that's interesting. But the game that's really fascinating, and we haven't said a word about this guy. Maybe we said 2 words about him so far. Ding Liren, which, by the way, some of the betting odds are saying that this is the guy they think is going to win the tournament. We could put all our attention on Fabiano, but Ding Liren has shown that he could absolutely win this event. No question about it. I mean, he did qualify by coming in second, surprisingly so, the World Cup. His rating of 2805 says, I'm one of only 3 players in the world, on the planet, who is over 2,800, and he is the one who has defeated Magnus Carlsen in a playoff. He defeated Magnus a couple of times. In fact, Magnus Carlsen going down after dominating everyone else. So we know, and a lot of the people in the world are saying that's the guy they want to see play Magnus.
And we have to take a look at that Chinese game, but unfortunately, Maurice, there's a Russian guy that says, nope, keep looking at my game, because look at Nepo's last move. I didn't even think that move was legal. B5 played, encouraging you to take on D5. What is going on in this position?
Well, I thought the move Queen D3 was a great move because it set up this wonderful, wonderful trap. The move Queen D3, we were talking about that pawn on C3. Queen D3 looks so logical. Let's eliminate that pawn. By the way, please do take my pawn on C4. Queen takes C4, D takes C4. Black is better. But black suddenly faces this move, rook takes H7, threatening to take on H8 with a check, and suddenly, oops, and there goes your queen. White's winning. So Queen D3 really gets a nice 2 thumbs up, and then suddenly comes this visual move, B5, and it's like, oh my goodness, what the heck just happened? Now the problem, as I see it, is your king was always planning to go to G2.
Right.
So taking on D5 with the queen means that, well, you're not going to be playing King G2 anytime soon. So that's the first thing you got to. There is this issue here with this pawn marching down the board already to C2. It's like, uh-oh. I'm sure when he played Queen D3, B5 was not on his radar. That is to say, Anish Giri is not expecting that move, Maurice.
And two reasons.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Please,
Alejandro.
please.
There are two big reasons, right? Because we talk about drawback chess, as a concept. When you make a move that looks good, yes, it can look good, but it always has a drawback. There's always moves. There's always a drawback to every single move you play, including mate, by the way. I mean, mate just has such a large plus that doesn't matter what the drawback was. But you always undefend a square of some kind when you make a move. Now, Queen D3, the drawback to this move, Queen D3, is it no longer covers the B5 square. Now, you're like, that's not important, is it? No way. It turns out that it very much so is important in this situation. The other thing so that's one reason why he might miss it. The other reason is when a pawn is defending a square, your brain may not even notice that the square is protected. Even a strong grandmaster, an elite grandmaster like Giri, this square is covered. B5 is covered. When B5 happens, whoa, wait, that's on the board? And it just suddenly like something just came out of the dark and just showed up in your face. This move B5, yes, the square is actually the move is actually playable. It doesn't matter that you're covering it with a pawn, which normally would prevent these kinds of moves. So now you see the C pawn is absolutely rambunctious in its desire to run down the board. What a move by Nepo, and man, Giri must just be shaking his head. The other thing is Giri was getting up from the board, walking around a lot during the game because he was so prepared. We know Giri does that when he has preparation. Walking around, usually he's looking at other boards and not worried about it because he's in his prep. What must he be feeling right now that his prep is not helping him?
Well, he's reeling backwards is what's happening right now. Sorry.
A lot of people look at Giri and they say, okay, he qualified by rating, but he only qualified by rating because Liren was second in the World Cup.
Right.
Liren had that rating spot guaranteed for him, even if he just lost every game in 2019.
Anish was his biggest cheerleader
right.
for that.
But let's remember
World
how
Cup.
he did in the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
He got eliminated in the first round every single time.
In the match play.
In the match play.
Right.
He hasn't been convincing for a while.
Exactly.
I know that he's prepared so strongly coming into this tournament. He went to Portugal for over a month with his seconds. He didn't say where the location was, but considering that everything was in Portuguese in his Instagram, it wasn't hard to know. He comes in saying, I need to prove something.
Right.
And he is not in the position he wants to be in this first game. He had great prep, and it's not fully backfired, but it's backfiring. He's uncomfortable. You don't want to be uncomfortable. No. This is your prep.
And you're white.
And you're white. This is the game that you proposed.
Right.
You told Nepo, you're a gambler, and I'm going to go to a sharp position. Nepo's like, bring it. I'm going to show you what it is to gamble in chess. I know how to handle these positions better than you. And yeah, Giri's extremely strong. But I don't feel he is this type of player.
And by the way, we should point out, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I am, didn't he decline to play in one tournament Maybe it was the last Grand Prix so that he didn't risk his rating.
Exactly.
Am I right
exactly.
about that?
Yeah.
I mean,
he stepped out of an event.
he said, I respectfully declined to play. That's not a good sign of somebody who's saying, look, I'm the rightful challenger to that guy.
Yeah.
Some people really, took a little.
Yeah, but on the other hand,
that.
I mean, I'm not really going to fault him on that one. I mean, by not playing, he got a seat into this candidates tournament.
I got you, Yasser. But when let's talk about that Singfield Cup when Magnus Carlsen was clear first, and Levon proposed a draw that would have won Magnus a tournament. The position was still unclear,
right?
And Magnus said, "No, I want to play," and he literally could have lost that game and end up tied with the other players. Instead, he declines it. I saw Fabi do it recently as well. Fabi has the tournament clinched. I think he did it in the candidates, in fact.
Against Grischuk. He could have offered a draw at any point.
At any moment.
Yeah.
And he said, no. I don't think I'm going to lose this position. Let's play. To me, the sign of the gangsters, the killers, the Bobby Fishers of the world, the Kasparovs, the Carlsens, now Fabi's showing himself in that kind of group, is they see a situation and say, draw, no. Backdooring into it, no. I'm going to show you how it's done. And so that may people saying, Giri, we don't know if you have what it takes. He's going to have a lot to prove. By the way, he has played in a candidates before. He played a couple of years ago in Moscow.
With one of the most famous results.
Drew every single game.
Every single game.
But he could have won a game or two and made himself a contender.
Again, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah.
This one, though, as we pointed out, losing your first game
don't do it.
Not the way you want to start a candidate.
Guys,
Exactly.
we got to actually see this Chinese game.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's get to it. Let's get to it.
I have
some
it on my
point.
board. And I was about to say that going back in time, just up to this point, after the move Bishop G4, Rook A3, players...
Rook A3.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about that move myself. But Rook A3, defending the pawn on D3, potentially preparing Queen A1.
That's why that guy's 2,800.
That's
right.
right. We're going to leave it there. Okay, Knight D7, H3, Bishop H5, Queen B1, not Queen A1, but Queen B1. And here, allowing this knight to come to C4, I don't know.
I hate this move B6.
Yeah, I think I would have just a limit.
It's not about... I actually don't mind not giving up the bishop.
You don't?
But I like the idea that when the knight on D... And this knight is going to improve.
Exactly.
When you look at this position, the Grandmaster looks at it, what's my worst piece that I can easily improve? This knight should be on C4.
Exactly.
And I look at Black's position and I think, this knight is going to get to C4, what can I do about it? Either I eliminate it immediately, but I give the pair of bishops. I'm not really sure I want to do that.
Okay.
Or I wait for it to jump to C4, and I eliminate it with my knight by putting the knight on B6.
Okay.
And that's why I hate the move B6 from Black, because it solidifies A5 and C5, which are not threatened
At all.
At all.
Right.
I don't have to play this anytime soon. White's never going to play B6 himself. So why not reserve the option of knight B6, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point in the future.
Exactly.
To eliminate this knight that will eventually land on C4.
And that terrifies me. I think that knight on C4 is just a monster piece.
It's just a monster piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So B7, B6, we're double guessing that move. Sorry.
You guys, yes to everything that was just said. Like, yes. And the thing about this position that concerned me from the very start is actually when the move the move E4 was played. Right, so if you back,
wow,
if
you go way back. Sorry.
Yeah, we're going to go actually here.
Okay,
because
E4.
As you can see, I mean, E4, this Botvinnik triangle for pawn formation, the bishop on G2, you bury it, right? You bury it, but you say, I'm going to command the light squares. I'm playing against that bishop sitting on C7. Now that your bishop had to hide, scramble away from my pieces, I'm going to dominate those light squares, and play is going to proceed according to this very specific structure that was set up. So, all right, you can play A5, that doesn't change anything. You can play this move. Now I'm going light squares again. You can play this one. I'm going to trade off, and I'm going to solidify those light squares. So now this is the play, except my bishop on G2 more and more is looking like a bad piece because of everything that happened. But my knight sees that C4 square, right? The light squares again. But also, let's make note, the D5 square, it's all those light squares that were just weakened. So when B6 happens, you see more light squares get weakened after these couple of moves. this move right here. Now it's like, yeah, I've been thinking about light squares for a long time, and you just kept accelerating my desires. So when you see this next move happen, which was knight f8, and you see bishop f3 land on the board, because he's headed to d4, but we're not worried about it. We're going to kill that piece the moment it arrives. So bishop f3 says, now we finally get to trade off this bad piece. And after the move queen to g5, I believe was played, h4, queen back, queen f3, and now we have completed the plan begun with the move on pawn to e4. We've gotten pure light square domination, and d5 looks so rosy that you guys see c4. I'm looking at d5 as another square because knight c4, knight e3, knight d5 looks sweet as a square. So, and anytime you land on the weak d4 square, it's dying. That knight's not going to be the equivalent. And you're going to be left with that bad bishop on c7. And so that's why all these moves it just seems have been falling into white's lap all this time.
I think when you look at this position, you just see suffering. This is a position that, with perfect play, I have no doubts black should hold. But it's so difficult to play with black.
Right.
You don't have a plan. You're just kind of sitting back.
Yeah, it feels like you're constantly reacting to whatever white is doing, and you're just kind of playing a defensive game. Not an easy game at all for black. Now,
By the way, queen f5 was played.
Oh,
I'm surprised by queen f5, I got to tell you.
I'm not. I like queen f5.
You like queen f5. It goes with the flow of
the light squares.
Of the light squares. I guess I'm anti-trading queen, showing my bias in this position.
It also is a practical move. You are Wang right now, and you've been offered a trade of queens. You know that it's going to lessen the pressure, but now you give up e4. And then you imagine in your head, knight on e4, f3, g4, rooks transferring to the king side.
No, that's pain.
And that's pain.
That's pure dominant. Your bishop on c7, again,
it's a big
it's crying.
Pawn,
it has no future.
Right, exactly. Let's just take a look at their lifetime scores. As you would expect, Ding Liren, China's number one player, should have an edge over his Chinese colleague.
And this is the public lifetime. There are tournaments in China that don't get reported to chess games and things like that. So yeah,
like
in the
secret training.
No, not secret training. Junior events and things. They're very close in age.
Gotcha.
So the events inside China that are not like the Chinese Championship or the Chinese League.
You know, the big events.
Yeah, if it's not a big event, you might not have seen them.
It's like a lot of opens in America. You don't know.
You might not. Yeah, the game might exist, but it's not been reported.
I got you. Nonetheless, a nice little edge for Ding Liren.
And this is his type of position.
Personal score and in the position.
Yes, this is again what we talk about. Even if Giri gets this position, you never associate Giri with wild, complicated positions.
Exactly.
He gets them once in a while, like every super grandmaster will. But he really thrives in those positional battles, in those snake-like python you can wrap around your opponent. Nepomniachtchi is known for his craziness. Ding Liren is known for this. Get an edge.
Bow constrictor light. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was about to say that Ding Liren, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, 2019 was a breakout year for him. It was a fabulous performance. And at the Cairns Cup, the big discussion, and Garry Kasparov was on the show for that discussion, and was asked, of the 8 players, 2, Ding Liren and Fabi stood out as the clear favorites, and the other field, would you take the field or would you take the 2 players? Well, Garry Kasparov said, I'm going to take the 2 players.
And giving odds.
And then suddenly, the field changed.
That field did
with MVL, and suddenly that scale kind of tipped a little bit. Would you take the field, or would you take the 2 players?
Actually, the Cairns Cup, I did say that I was going to take the 2 players. I was giving even money.
Before
the
MVL
change.
entered, yes.
But it is hard for me to really understand the pros and cons as a challenger. Because Radjabov, he's kind of a mystery figure in the chess world.
Exactly.
He just doesn't play as much. When you think about active chess players at the very top, you kind of forget that Radjabov still is around.
Because he's so strong.
He's so strong, like ridiculously strong. His preparation is on point. He comes up with these great ideas. I think the entirety of some Rosolimo lines are alive because Radjabov came up with it. He was a King's Indian expert. Like
Ding Liren and others.
Only Hikaru really understood the King's Indian the way Radjabov did.
Exactly.
And the thing is, just doesn't play. So it's difficult to assess, is he really that strong? Is he really going to be challenging the other players? Because he doesn't play Vikense, he doesn't play the Singfield Cup, he doesn't play the Grand Chess Tour.
But as we saw in the World Cup, when he's on form, he's on form.
He's on form.
Do you take the field today, right now, this tournament? Do you take the field, Maurice, or do you take the two favorites?
Well, there's a lot of data we could throw at this one. A lot of data, right? For starters, we've seen that the favorite has not won the tournament since Magnus, and he didn't even win it clear. He had to tie and win on tie breaks.
Yep.
Not only did the favorite not win, the number 2 player didn't win either. Right? If you go back, the number 2 ranked player didn't win any of the last 3 tournaments. Right? So we're talking about Fabi was number 5.
Yeah. Last
time in Berlin. He was the number 5 ranked player.
Yeah, after disastrous Vachier-Lagrave.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he still won the tournament. He was the number 5 rated player in the world. Then we go back and we can talk about Karyakin, who was the number 7 ranked player in the tournament, not in the world, in the tournament, specific tournament we're talking about. He was the 7th ranked player in the tournament, and he won the tournament a point clear. We go back to Anand, who was the number 3 ranked player in the tournament. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure he wasn't number 1 or 2.
I don't think so. He had a really bad year before that candidate.
So he might have even been worse.
3.
He might have not even been number 3.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
But I know he wasn't one of the top 2.
Exactly.
So that means numbers 1 and number 2 have not won since we're going back to Magnus Carlsen. And even he, as the clear runaway favorite, number 2 was like Kramnik maybe at 28.10, maybe, or maybe it was Aronian. But Magnus was 28.72. He was the clear, should have dominated favorite.
Right.
Well, Maurice,
And he only tied.
we do have a phone call with us from Egypt. So, if you can tell us your name and what is your question?
Hello, my name is Sammy. Well, first of all, thank you for making the commentary. It's always fun to follow the games with you guys.
Thank you.
My question is, if getting a seed by being a wild card was abolished, what other way would you propose for a player to qualify? Would it be winning a certain tournament, the breeding? What would it be?
Well, that's a great question.
Which was abolished? If what?
Wild card.
If the wild card was abolished.
Yes. Well, there are a lot of easy options, right? You can give one more to the Grand Swiss. You could give another rating spot. But what would be a cool way to do it? Like a different scenario?
Jump right in. I'm still thinking. I mean,
Well, that's a great question,
I mean,
because-
it's a great question.
And I think it's an important one because there have been so many discussions. Abolish the wild card, abolish the wild card. What do we replace it with? Because as I said, there's a lot of easy answers, right? Another rating guy or...
This might be controversial, but a fan favorite?
A vote.
A vote.
Ooh. Controversy.
I know,
Great answer.
because somebody's
Great
going to rig the voting system. But if it wasn't rigged,
That would be so cool.
yeah.
Yes.
I think if it wasn't rigged, I think, by the way, MVL would have been the runaway favorite,
Oh.
a fan vote, right?
I mean,
guess
even if you rig it, it would have been so much.
I got one for
It'd be
you.
hard to rig that one.
I got
Yeah.
one for you.
Please.
What is the hardest, by far, tournament series in the world right now?
Oh, that's easy. It's the Grand Chess
Chess
Tour.
tour.
The Grand Chess Tour. You got to go through animals.
Yeah.
And I mean, not animals. You
Featuring Magnus Carlsen,
teeth
too, by the
baring
way.
their teeth to get anywhere in that. And what about the top qualifier from the Grand Chess Tour?
Right.
That whole series and lined up,
Right.
who is not, for example, Magnus or isn't qualified by other means.
Mm-hmm.
If that had been the case, the qualifier this year would have been one MVL, who lost in the finals to Ding Liren in London.
Right.
So, and by the way, we had Magnus in that. MVL defeated Magnus in order to get to the finals, and Magnus defeated Levon Aronian. Oh, by the way, our thoughts, best wishes are with Levon and his wife, Ariane, who was in a car accident, but apparently some broken bones, but her life is out of danger. So Ariane's a sweet lady. We wish you all the best.
Absolutely.
Well, Yasser, let's take our first break of the day. We'll be right back with absolutely more thrilling chess. It's the 2020 candidates, guys. Thanks for joining us. We will be right back with more action.
Can you hear it? It's the sound of hope and health and strength. It's the sound of compassion, of open doors, where people and machines are in tune and miracles occur. It's the sound of personalized healthcare and active communities. It sounds like life, and it's what you hear when you really listen.
St. Louis University is celebrating its 200th anniversary. Offering world-class education in the heart of St. Louis, SLU attracts students and professors from around the globe. In 2015, SLU partnered with the St. Louis Chess Club to start a top-tiered collegiate chess team. On the very first year of the team's inception, SLU obtained second best university at the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championships. Higher purpose, greater good. St. Louis University. back in round one of the 2020 candidates. What a show we have for you guys. This is do or die. Only one winner out of this event and 7 losers. There's no other way to look at this tournament. It's been the way historically, and we expect fighting chess, and we're getting it.
We are. The tournament so far, the first round, preparation is dominating, but is it paying off, Alejandro?
Let's take a look. We had left off in this craziness between Anish Giri and Jan Nepomniachtchi. Nepomniachtchi saying, I don't care about your preparation. I love this kind of positions, and let's see where the players have landed.
Well, it was this move, Queen D3, and suddenly this very visual move, B7, B5. Anish was, I think, just rocked backwards after that move, and he decided to try to shut down the game by capturing on C3 and playing E4 to break up this great team of pawns that Black has amassed in the center on the queen side.
It certainly feels, with this move, Queen C3 and E4, that White's given up ambition. He's pulling the brakes.
Exactly. That's exactly what he did. He pulled the parachute.
He's down a pawn. Let's just keep that in mind. I mean, he's currently down a pawn. So, and after this capture, he's down 2 pawns. But of course, he's getting one back pretty quickly.
Exactly. He's reckoning that this pawn on C4 is going to get captured. But first, he was hoping that with this move, Rook H4, to be able to capture this and this.
Ambitious.
Ambitious, indeed. Bishop E6, and, well, I mean, let's face it, this preparation has boomeranged.
Well, hold on. Guys, I mean, Bishop C4
Okay.
looks like an amazing, I mean, Castles is so impressive because Bishop C4 looks, like, from afar, like you're going to be better maybe in this position after the trade of the bishops.
Yeah, because Bishop C4, I'm going to take on E6 with check. How can there be any kind of
a trickery? I mean, it's an incredible position. He castles here. Like, the pawn's hanging, you're going to lose it. He castles, bishop takes C4. If I'm Anish looking from afar, this looks like I'm just stealing back my pawn with a better position, except there's a king move, and in here, the engine gives the simple sidestep.
I tried King H8, but King G7.
King G7, another semi-remarkable move, because you put your king on H8 seems like the more natural thing to do. But now the statement is by Black, what do you do about this weird pin I got? I got a Rook C8 coming. I mean, this is deep.
Right.
You castle so that you can play King G7, so that you can then ask the guy what he's going to do about the situation. And it looks like he should have some kind of way to deal with it, and yet every move walks into something else.
Maurice, I got to ask you, and hopefully you can ask the engine, why G7 and not H8?
Yeah, because H8 was my first choice as well.
Right. What is the main line after H8 that makes that difference, right? Why would you want the king a little bit more exposed?
Yeah, the king on G7.
We can take a look at the board, hopefully.
Yes, exactly. So in this position, I would just love to play the move bishop D5, except bishop takes D5 is with a check.
Also Rook C8.
I'd love to play Rook C8, but bishop
check.
takes E6 with a check. So we're going to move our king. Now the choice is H8 or G7, and Maurice is going to answer that question for us.
Because we're not good enough.
Because I would play the H8, but go ahead.
I'll give you a hint. Drawback chess.
Okay.
Let's get to drawback chess. What's the drawback to King H8?
It's not on G7.
And the eighth rank might be a
What
check?
was it doing? What was it doing on G8 that it's no longer doing, and that it would be doing on G7? But
G7 protects the F6 pawn.
What else? More importantly, protects?
H7.
But it also defends H7 on H8, so it's
And what else does it?
the rook!
The
rook on
rook,
F8 is
guys, the
defended.
rook on F8.
You move the queen, and it's hitting. No, not A3 because it's check on C4.
Right.
Gotcha.
You can't
Queen
do it
B4.
right now, but sooner, and he did take on C4. Sooner or later, that rook on
F8.
F8 is going to hang.
Undefended.
Pure and
Gotcha.
simple, and that's the reason.
Gotcha.
So
you
you got to
move
look
it
at the
to
drawbacks.
G7.
G7 keeps the connection to that rook.
Okay.
And he did take, so here we go. Will he find the connected move? H8 is, of course, a safer feeling move, but your rook on F8 would hang in that line and allow the queen to escape. So now it's all about keeping this rook under attack.
Oh, it's
wild.
wild.
Under defense. Beautiful move. I mean, castles, just going into the line, it seemed strange, and then you castle, and then you come up with this waiting move and say, you cannot fix it. The problem is, you play a move like this one. By the way, we could have gone here. Let's say you play king h8, queen d3, unpinned completely. You're ready to move your queen, except you allow another move, bishop to f5. Hey, your rook's pinned. But now I can play queen a3. Hello. Your rook is hanging in this line, and it doesn't matter. So again, that's why you want your king on g7. With this now, you cannot play this move. I just play bishop f5. You got zero, zilch.
You just lose.
Hand over the exchange.
Right.
So that's the point. And so here, bishop takes c4. If he finds king g7, which no reason why he shouldn't, and especially if he's pausing right now, Anish Giri is going to have a lot of work ahead.
So what is the line after king g7?
Now, there is some work here to consider. The move, the queen can move, like let's say here, for example. The rook's going to attack it and question this connection. Where's the queen going to go? Everywhere it goes, it's walking into pin. C2, C3, D3, anything that guards this bishop will walk into a pin. The line I'm intrigued by is this one. What if I take?
It's probably a draw, but you're going to suffer.
Yeah, this one, yes. Exactly. Will you want to go into this line after capturing? You have bishop and rook, rook and pawn. Not even a pawn. You're actually only even in pawn. So this line after rook takes b3, you can also just capture. I think it's not going to. It's going to matter in the long term because you have to defend this pawn as well. The queen is going to torture you, and the main difference is this pawn formation. These pawns can motion down the board and create some kind of difficulty. So this would be a lot of suffering for Giri in this game.
Well, if he finds the move king g7, Yasser, take us to the Russian matchup. We haven't really
covered. He did find king g7
on the board
being played.
Okay, because yes, we have, actually it was a kind of funny thing. We were on a break and we had just seen this position after queen e8. We were anticipating d4, knight h4 kind of ideas. Well, e2, e4, kind of an echo move of the Chinese game between Ding Liren and Wang Hao. e2, e4, blocks the bishop on g2, but has a very specific strategic aim, as we're about to find out. Bishop d6, sidestepping a potential for d4, knight h4. And this is what Sasha is looking at, is parking a knight on f5 and perhaps using his f-pawn as a battering ram. f2, f4, we were kind of focused on d4 there for a while, but maybe f4 first, knock out the e5 pawn for the f2 pawn, and then play d4. And it was funny, right about here, I was recalling a game from the Romantic school of chess where there was an f4 takes, d4 takes, e5 takes, and somebody just crushed black. And I can't remember who the players were, but he just gave up all of his pawns so he could get these battering ram in the center with d4 and e5.
Well, certainly appealing.
The Romantic school of chess.
But you can also just take on f4, right?
Of course, of course. I mean, and let's see what has happened actually.
So f4 was played.
No.
Yes, f4 was played. Okay. And they took on f4, and Grischuk took back on f4 with the g-pawn, which also prepares the move e5.
Exactly.
And I see your bar from afar. It gives white a little bit of an edge.
Our chessometer
I
there.
hate black's position.
Hate it.
I think it's just trash.
Right.
You go e5, d4, d5, I win. I don't understand. What is black's plan here?
I'm thrown backwards too, because I like these central pawns. I like this bishop on g2. Alexander Grischuk is a natural-born King's Indian defense player.
Yes.
He loves the King's Indian defense from both the white and black side, and this is a game that's right up his alley. Is it that the knight on h4 is badly placed?
I mean, the engine seems to think black's okay.
Bishop
I think
takes
it's playing
g4?
No, it's playing f6, just holding back white's pawns. But it's difficult to believe. And perhaps this is the modern chess. New players with new understanding, like Kirill Alexenko saying, look, Alejandro, you're old. This is the way we play chess nowadays. It's okay for black. Don't you worry. I got this under control. And Grischuk 1-0 against Alexenko with one draw. Alexenko actually, very interesting, has not played against many of these players. I think this is the first time. Actually, this might be the first time in candidates that two players haven't faced each other. I can't imagine that being a scenario before.
And I was just about to say, I mean, how much experience does he have against all of the other players in the field? Yeah. Maybe that what we just saw is kind of typical of his. I mean, he's so young.
It's very typical. He has not played, I think, against Fabi.
maybe Wang Hao too.
He hasn't played against the Chinese players.
Yeah,
He's just not inexperienced completely.
Right.
So he needs to bring his game, say, I got new things, I got this new energy in chess. He's being coached by Peter Svidler, so he definitely has some experience.
That's the voice of
That's the
experience
voice of
right there.
right there.
Maurice, what do you got for us?
Now, I didn't know about this business about the coaching by Peter Svidler.
No, I didn't know that about that either.
Brand
Yeah.
new to me.
Right.
And I'm wondering, if you're Peter Svidler,
Yeah.
you've played in Candace before.
A lot.
You've won the Russian championship 8 times. You've played these guys. You know their ins and outs and weaknesses and all that. You're giving your young charge all this. But can you imagine Peter sitting there thinking, I mean, it'd be hard not to. I know Peter's such a nice guy that you know, he may not have these kind of thoughts, at least too often. But every once in a while, he might be thinking, why you and not me?
Of course. Of course.
I easily play in this tournament against these guys. No question about it. But okay, Peter, you know, he joins us often, a very dear friend and colleague. But yeah, certainly, I think maybe many would say he's stronger than his charge at the moment. But nevertheless, it's the future of Russian chess we're talking about. Guys, can we look at this position? We really like black here.
White.
Sorry, we really like white here. I like the plan of bringing the king over, guarding this pawn, playing on the light squares, preparing everything before you finally hit him in the head with f4. Maybe getting the knight to f5 or d5, caught those kind of threats, make his knight back up, and then eventually you get the pawn break that you need to play. But the immediate f4 lands on the board with no attendant preparation.
Right.
None. Doesn't mean just play it. And the thing about this move is it allows a capture here when you cannot capture back. I mean, I can't conceive of you capturing back here and allowing this pawn to just drop so the knight can go back on the next move.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right.
That looks wrong.
Yeah.
So that means you have to take with the bishop.
Okay.
In this position.
Okay.
And now, okay, you're still on this guy, but knight takes. So bishop takes doesn't really help because that'll hang. Knight takes, pawn takes, and now this position. Is this position great for white because of this knight dominating this bishop, where now this bishop does have strength here? Now, you may say, but the bishop is bad. The engine comes up with this very dynamic shot, f5, right away, wrecking white's pawn structure, looking to get the rook into the game. Remember the weakness on this square. And now if you play e5, suddenly h4 starts to be a possibility later. You can double along this line so the king can't just leave. It's not as easy, this position. It's suddenly much, much sharper. King might just park itself on the e6 square. This one is super interesting now, when before it looked like you were just going to get your face stepped on, like literally. Now this one, I don't know.
f4 impatient?
Maybe impatient, but you know, Yasser, I look at this position. Maurice asks us, is this as good for white? Visually, I would say yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. When I look at it, I have the open G file. Your pressure on d3 is completely irrelevant because I will at some point defend it with the rook on g3.
Right.
So what do I care? My king's going to go to e2. I understand the engine now understands chess so well. You know, the new Stockfish, the new Leela, they do such a wonderful job at understanding weaknesses and long-term plans.
Right.
And they've changed dramatically the way we see a lot of positions, because when I see this position, I think it's just a matter of time before I find a breakthrough.
But
nowadays, the engine's saying black's better.
Yeah, but look,
like, what is that?
But the problem is timing, Alejandro. If I had a king maybe on e3 already, if I could play the move f5 myself already, like put a pawn on f5. I don't care about your dark squares, because now your G line is a huge problem forever. My king is guarding the one weakness. I'll put a rook on f3. I'll double on the G file. I'll tie you down. I'll bring my knight back to e3 to d5. I mean, it's
you
a party.
Ideas.
I got some thoughts. The problem is, concretely, after f5, e5, which f5 has been played, e5 was played. Actually, I put a king on e6. But Wang Hao just dropped a rook on e6. And so much for the G file, as a rook is going to go to g4, and whose weaknesses are what?
Whoa.
Suddenly you're defending multiple weaknesses, the D pawn, the F pawn, and the H pawn, and that bishop will be able to get back to d8. I mean, this one, Oh, and the rook going to d4. Sorry, there's an arrow on the Yasser Seirawan.
Put it that way, right?
Whoa! I mean, black looks great here.
When you put it that way.
Yeah, okay, I agree. What can I say?
A little bit of a wake up there.
Well, an f5 on the board. We don't have the move e5 just yet, but it does seem like the character of the position has changed from something that Liren was controlling. We're talking about the boa constrictor type of position that he likes. Certainly looks different now.
Oh, without question. Did he? Yeah, no, that impatient move.
Yeah, the problem is this just drops a pawn, right?
Exactly.
Take, and rook d4.
That's exactly, and I don't get the nice chance what Maurice was talking about to bring my knight to the d5 square.
Oh, this has changed.
Yeah,
a lot.
really dramatically.
Unbalanced pawn formation as well favors the bishop. The fact that this bishop came alive with this move, f5, he did not see this pawn break. It reminds me of the b5 break in the game with Nepo against Giri.
Wow.
Your brain just doesn't notice it somehow because the square is protected by a pawn.
Right.
And it's just one of those moves that GMs miss. I did a video on that, by the way, and we want to check it out at Chess Base. I didn't get paid to plug that, by the way. But nevertheless, no. There's certain moves that strong players will miss. We talked about this before. We talked about moves, retreating moves or moves you'll miss. Suddenly, why are you going all the way back to switch side? Oh, whoa, where did that come from? Absolutely. Discovered attacks, discovered checks, allowing discovered checks are moves people will miss. When Giri saw bishop takes c4 in this game, if I go back a move here, he thought, I got this thing on your queen. I'm just, oh, wait a minute. You can make a waiting move like this one. King moves, knight retreats, king moves, unusual king moves. These are moves that top players will miss.
Maurice, they're going straight into your line. Giri has sacrificed this queen with
the
move.
Queen b3,
rook b8, and
on the board.
Takes e6.
Bishop takes
all
e6.
on the board.
All
Giri's
on the board.
saying, I'm going to suffer, but this was the best
He's got to go for it. He's going to try to make a draw and survive. So there's certain moves strong players will miss, and one of them absolutely is moves where a pawn is protecting a square. You're trained from birth almost, at least the birth of your chess career. If a pawn's guarding the square, nothing can go there. Just don't think about it. So your brain gets trained over years and decades that these are the kind of moves you'll see strong players miss. And we've seen it happen maybe twice in this event so far. F5. You think if he had seen the move F5, Liren would have played F4? I mean, he would have noticed F5 and said, whoa, no. You're getting too much play, dude. You're getting a lot. He missed this move, and now he has to deal with the sudden shift in energy where he was suppressing everything his opponent had, and suddenly black has tremendous play.
Thank you, Maurice. And Alejandro.
Well, we have a little bit of a special feature, dropping some chess knowledge for you. I know a lot of fans want to know not only about the games, but how to play like professionals. So let's go with our chess club staff to see what they have in store for us.
Tricky traps.
All right. Thank you, guys. I'm Jonathan Schranz, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited to be on the show. Thank you for allowing me this wonderful opportunity. I did want to take a very small break from the incredibly professional chess to mention some of the stuff that happens at the real level, the club level. And today I did want to share with you the Siberian trap. I had a work colleague ask me just yesterday. He said, I keep playing, they play e4. I'm a big Sicilian player. But all the time, I'm running into this move, d4, the Smith-Morra gambit, and I need a recipe. I only have 5 minutes. Tell me what I should do. So if you're in this same boat and you have problems with the Morra, here is what I recommend. At this point, you should accept the gambit when you play d4. Their idea is to play c3, and when you take, they're going to try to develop their pieces as fast as possible. Now, the mind of an average Morra player thinks of only one thing. They want to play knight to f3, bishop to c4, castle, queen e2, follow this basic blueprint of bringing the bishop out, start putting the rooks in the middle, look around for sacrifices, and checkmate the player with black. But I do have a little way of playing that can get you out of all of this trouble and set a little trap for white. So white could be in trouble after you play knight to c6, the main move, knight f3, and now the move e6. Among others, this is one of the great moves to play. You also won't run into any move order tricks if you are a Taimanov or Khan player, so this is particularly well suited if you were going to play e6 on move 2 against most Sicilians. Now, they will continue with what they normally do, bishop to c4, and instead of the move a6, we can start to set a little trap with this move, queen to c7. This is taking control over the e5 square, so now we're ready to play knight f6 next without getting harassed. White players will tend to castle now, and you can play the move knight to f6. The trap is now nearly set, and if they follow the regular script that any Mora player has been taught, they play queen e2. Now is the time to set an excellent little trap. The move knight to g4 actually is setting something up very devious and threatening to win the game on the spot. And at first, it may look like just a total Patzer move. You've moved the knight again for a second time. Look at white. White's already castled, got a whole bunch of pieces out. This must be silly nonsense. But you'd be surprised, even in the chess-based database, over 50 people have played this move, h3, including a 2600 rated player. Grandmaster has fallen for this trap. It happens all the time, especially if you're a blitz player. You're going to get this nonstop if you do play this way. So after h3, hopefully you guys can see the trap. I will give you a moment to think it out. But the big hint here is black is looking at this h2 square. If it weren't for this knight on f3, we would already have a checkmate. So the way to try to remove that knight is with the brilliant move, knight to d4, attacking the knight and the queen. So white is best advised here just to give up the queen. Not such an easy task, but obviously if you do take this knight, you are going to run into a checkmate. Happens all the time. With that being said, there are alternatives if you do move your queen, and if you know, I really don't want to lose my queen, well, it's still checkmate. Knight to f3, and however they take back the same checkmate. So this happens all the time. Now, you may be wondering, well, okay, I play some pretty good people. I'm not going to fall for it. The people I play, they don't run into this. They're going to see this trap. They're not going to play h3 and fall for it. What will they normally do? Another big mistake you see all the time in this position is rook to d1. Even some pretty decent players have done it. The idea of controlling the d4 square is very obvious. So why not do it with a rook? Keep developing pieces. That rook usually goes there anyway. And now, though, black plays bishop to c5, just putting pressure on the f2 pawn. And yeah, white's already in very bad shape. If you have to play the move bishop to e3, you simply take with the knight. White is still a pawn down, and his position is horrible here. So this is another way that happens all the time. A more successful white player here, instead of falling for all of this, might play the move knight to b5. This is the appropriate way of defending against the threat. The knight not only attacks the queen, but also defends the d4 square. And after they go back, there is the option of now playing h3. Notice how knight d4 no longer works because it's covered by the knight on b5. So black has two options here. I argue they're both very good for black. One is to set another trap. This is now the fishing pole trap, so if the first one doesn't work, and you feel like risking it up, playing another one, feel free to go for this one. The point is now, if you take the knight, you are absolutely lost again as white. You take back, and you're going to win this knight. Because if the knight does move, say it just goes somewhere, it's the same sort of checkmate on the H-file. So I do hope that that does help you guys, and we will stay around with us, please. We're going to continue our coverage here in just a moment.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's a very classical trap, isn't it?
One of the things I like about it is that it's completely sound. There's knight g4 doesn't have a refutation. It's actually just good for black.
Right.
White's supposed to not castle in that position. It's supposed to make any other move. But I like traps that are also sound.
Exactly.
They make me feel really nice that I'm not just sacrificing my position, hoping my opponent doesn't know it.
While Jonathan was giving that nice little tricks and traps, we were just we thought that Kirill was playing abominably. He played knight a5, and he was like, he's just setting traps on the board. Okay, bishop a4. I hope he doesn't see it, because I can win an exchange.
And shockingly, he saw it.
He saw it. Yeah. He sidestepped. Queen d8. I hope he doesn't see it. I'll take the knight. Oh, he saw that one. How about this one? Knight c4.
Hey, it's a cooler version.
A very nice version. You take the knight. Oops, there's a trap. He saw that one too. I mean, the guy hasn't missed a trick.
What a guy. I mean, how can you beat these people?
I know. And suddenly, he essentially, black forced white to basically dominate the center. And he put his knight on the c4 square, and black really hasn't made progress. Is it because black is just fishing for an idea, Maurice? I mean, it just like he just didn't come up with a plan, and all he could come up with was maybe a bad plan, and he's played the move f7, f5. I think I'm up to date with the players now.
We're up to date. Also notice the time, 3 minutes and 45 seconds for Grischuk, 5 minutes and 45 seconds for Giri Alexeyenko. Definitely going to be a factor. We know that Grischuk loves this.
How is this possible?
How is it possible? It's a great question.
Yes.
But Maurice, what is going on? Can Black somehow hold on to this position? Again, my understanding, Black's busted.
Yeah, it's just a terrible
We
position.
all hate it. The engine hates it. Enough said.
Cool.
We're just going to see what happens in that game. In the meantime, this has happened in this game. Rook G6. We saw the Rook E6, Rook G6 maneuver by Wang Hao against his countryman. One of the favorites in this event, Ding Liren, who has also played in only one candidate prior to this one, the last one that Fabi won in Berlin. There was a quietly strong performance by Ding Liren going +1, winning one game and drawing the rest of his games. So he made his presence known, but not so much as to compete with the top players for the entire title itself. So he's hoping for much more here, but not off to an auspicious start as he's allowed this f5 break on the different circumstances. A rook going to g4, a rook going to d4. This pawn on h4 will hang. Bishop dropping back to d8. The king will sit on e6, nestle that in that square. Now, what's odd about this is the engine still think White's okay with a move like knight to e3, but I wouldn't care about anything the engine has to say in a position like this one, unless you can completely shut down Black's initiative, because Black now sees swings and punches and possibilities where before he just saw dire suffering. Right now, Ding Liren has to be super careful. Another player who's going to have to be careful is Anish Giri, because he has decided to go for this position. His pawn and bishop as harmonious as they can be, so no problem there. It is true that if only he could pick this pawn off the board and make it a white pawn on e3, for example, then he would be thinking, is there some kind of possible fortress I could set up, right? It's very close to a fortress if this were a white pawn on e3. Now he's thinking, I got a bishop and a pawn, maybe that's enough to give me counterplay so I can create maybe some kind of fortress in compensation. Unfortunately, this pawn can be a battering ram, and these pawns will go down the board as well, a potential creation of a passed pawn. The key in this kind of position is going to be, what can the queen attack, for starters? Not so easy to do. And if not that, then where are the passed pawns? If a passed pawn shows up on the board, there's big trouble. Now, White does have one here, but it looks like he can't move. It looks like Black's going to be the one. Who's going to slow this guy down? And that pawn is also going to be near the king as well. So that's what Black's going to look for, something with the pawns coming down. Now, this rook wishes it were back home, I can tell you that. It wishes it were a d1 hanging out with the rest of the crowd. It will look to try to get back into the game as well. The game is not easy to win for Black for sure, but pure suffering. Black's no longer thinking he's going to lose this game. He's thinking, I should score the point.
Nice. Thank you, Maurice, for that.
Giri with only 2 minutes left, but remember that he's very, very close to move 40, and once he reaches move 40, he will have an extra 50 minutes. So he's
time control.
Yeah, he's not really in any danger time-wise.
The move rook g8 was really a shock move for me. I was thinking rook h4 was automatic. Guys, I got to tell you, for the first round game, even though MVL may not be the highest ranked player in the group, this game for me is such a key game between Fabi and MVL. Fabi, who stands much better in my opinion, much better. I really like the opposite color bishop middle games. It's all about king position. Whose king is safer? And with the pawn on h3, the dark squares for White are compromised, and the other thing that stands out is this pawn on a5. Of course, if White's bishop gets to b7, then you could say this is weak, but right now the a5 pawn is a weakness. There's some dark squares issues. You always have to be careful that Black is going to set up a battery and something goes wrong.
We do have a couple of moves.
Please.
Queen e5 and queen d5 have been played.
Queen e5 on the board, queen d5 on the board.
Response.
Yes.
And I cannot take on b2 because I assume I get mated. I don't actually get mated on f8, but I think it's just a draw, right? If I go queen takes c5, queen takes a2, rook f8 check, I take on f8, you take on f8, queen g8, and I think just to move queen d6.
No. I'm a pawn grubber in the family over here, guys. I mean, I'm a pawn up. I'm not saying this is a win. No. But I'm saying, hey, wait a minute.
Not a draw either, right?
I mean, well, yeah, exactly. It's a 2-result game,
Yeah.
and for Fabi, he'll be happy to get here. So he does have this possibility that he can grab the pawn.
Or
now,
he can just sidestep.
Oh, what? Okay.
Well, you guys are talking about the middle
Sure.
game, right?
Yes.
The middle game with the opposite color bishops. Can I play like queen e3, I think? Something like
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Say, I'm going to
Okay.
keep up the pressure. I don't know what my
Right.
threat is, but I'm keeping up the pressure.
Exactly. It's not like you're mating on G1. You're just saying
Right.
to white, what are you going to do? I'm thinking this bishop, for whatever reason, should really be on the king side. So let me just, I'll plunk it here. I got ideas maybe of a perpet
And I
in
think,
the position.
I think here we emphasize the difference of the bishops.
Right.
And here black plays g6.
Okay.
It kills the bishop on b1.
True.
And my king on the dark squares should always be safe. Yes, it exposes the diagonal, but the diagonal will be controlled by a dark squared bishop at some point. I'll put the bishop on d4, something along these lines.
Right.
And this one also feels like it's suffering for white.
No question about it. I like black's position. I like grabbing the pawn as well. I don't see the real drawback to grabbing the pawn. Queen takes b2. If you don't go into this queen ending,
No, you have to.
why did you play queen d5?
No, there's no choice.
Yes, and I wanted the same as you made such a compelling argument, so I started making moves here.
Okay.
And it turns out we can get to an interesting position. How do you play queen takes, and queen c6?
Queen c6.
This one
C6.
tickles your rook and the a pawn, looking to win the pawn back immediately. Queen e2 stops all that nonsense. The pawn on
Right.
a6 can't be touched because the rook on f1. And now the move
hanging.
rook to c1. And these are real specific, hard moves to find defensively. Queen c6 may not be so hard, but rook c1. The thing about rook c1 is the move b4 is not playable.
A6
now,
defended.
That's defended. Your rook is not contributing to attacking anything right at the moment. So you're saying, well, what are you doing? You just dropped your pawn. But now look at this nice move. Queen to b7.
No.
Keeping an eye on this pawn, attacking this one, and we're going straight through. And don't leave with your queen so easily because this queen also has its own ideas. A queen e7 siding could come depending on where your queen goes. So this one is not that easy to defend everything. Remember,
Right.
rook b1 could also happen at any moment. You cannot leave the back rank with your rook. So this pawn maybe has gone too far down the board. So the engine, looking way ahead, found a way to defend this position if you take on b2.
If you just continue this line, I know it's deep, but queen d2, it does defend the pawn on b4, it does attack the rook, sets up maybe for rook e1 check on a good day.
Well, no rook e1 check for you. Rook to c8, hitting the back rank. Now that your
then
queen is gone,
check.
you'll get a check. But where you want to go here?
It feels
Yeah,
so
I defend.
flimsy.
Yeah,
Here?
I mean, I'm not keeping the extra pawn is the problem.
I see the bar, but it's just like
You're not
so
keeping the
flimsy
pawn.
from
Yeah.
white side, I think.
That queen b7 move,
Star move, absolutely. Difficult to see, but Maxim is the kind of player, he very specifically tries to solve problems with tactics.
Two great calculators in the world, these two players.
Absolutely.
Two of the
I wouldn't-
absolute best.
You wouldn't sit here and be stunned by this. By the way, I didn't answer a question from a long time ago. You know, I hate when I watch shows. You're watching a show.
You're leaving us hanging.
And the questioner, I've seen this so far
Right.
with this virus issue quite a bit, and it really gets under my my skin. When a reporter says, "Oh, we have a question for you." This is the question.
Blah,
Ding,
blah,
ding, ding,
blah.
ding, ding, ding. And the person says, "Interesting question." And they never answer the question. They start talking about something else. And I go, "Wait a minute, what about that really good question? Why didn't you answer the question?" It's maddening. You had a question for me earlier about would I take the field?
Yes,
Or
versus the top two.
And you guys actually took the question from me because you had to go to a caller, so I wasn't able to get there. So now I want to make sure I don't do
Okay.
things, that I don't like.
Stay on point.
Right. So getting back, would I take the field? Well, all the data says I should take the field. Despite the fact that Fabi is clearly the #1 player in this tournament, he's far ahead of anyone else, except maybe Liren might argue. I'm right there. You know I'm super powerful. Absolutely. But you've got MVL who showed up, and that really changed things quite a bit. You've got Nepo And the way Nepo played so far, number 5 player in the world, but the way he's played so far shows you why he's one of the top players in the world. You've got a Grischuk who could get things done. Anish, I would give lesser weight to the other 3 players. So not by much, but and history has said it's not so easy for the favorites, but not by much, I might take the field. I would take the field. But that said, if you said to me, but who will you pick just straight up? Hey, baby, it's Fabio all day.
Right.
It's Fabio all day, no question about it.
We'll jump right back in there with
Because
you.
we got
too.
Grischuk's game,
Yeah.
who's starting to play on the increment. You know how much he loves doing that. He's got 48 seconds left to make about 12 moves of chess.
And he gets 30 seconds for each completed move.
Each completed move, so he's not in danger of actually flagging. So let's take a look at the position right now.
Well, he's got this huge pawn center, and when we left it, we just left it after the move f5. He did eventually decide to play e5, creating these passed pawns. Now, don't for a moment think you can capture this pawn. Grandmasters don't usually blunder pawns. Queen c4 check captures the knight, so knight takes c3 would have been a terrible decision for black. After knight d2, the knights were traded, and white is ready to rumble. b5, e6. You have to play bishop e6, and now you got to go for a blockade. And if black can get in moves like b5 and maybe bishop d5, okay, he's got some chances, but no, it just feels like white has made too much progress.
I don't know. White played some calm moves.
What was that?
White did some stuff that
Bishop e3.
Was there something wrong with c4?
I was about to say, was there something wrong with d5? I guess c6 is okay.
c6, d6 looks terrible.
And yeah, this just looks terrible. Wait a minute.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Oh, maybe it's like rook d8 and
C4?
c4, b5 or something like this, and your structure collapses?
absolutely
I don't know.
correct.
Whoa. Oh, D2 is
Absolutely
hanging.
correct.
Yeah, d2's hanging.
Okay,
That's a big problem, that your bishop's not
Right.
attacked once the queen moves.
Exactly. I was putting a lot of oomph behind this pawn on d5, which nicely explains why he played the move bishop e3.
But okay,
that's a
Alexenko played
soft move, though. it
Alexenko
feels.
played c6, and let's catch up because they're
Yes.
pretty quickly. c6 was played.
Dude.
Now, your plan, b5 and bishop d5, blockading the light squares. b6 played a4. Well,
stop.
b5.
Makes sense.
I think I see the move a6.
Yep.
And I'm kind of wondering why this pawn's
A6.
not hanging. Why is this pawn not hanging, Maurice? You have an engine.
It's hanging.
It's legal. It's legal. You can
It's
capture
hanging.
that
I mean,
one.
he could play rook a8 and give up the b pawn.
But-
it looks like he's looking for some tricks. Queen takes.
I don't see them.
Well,
The move rook b8 doesn't work here.
And the thing
because
about
the
Grischuk
C6
is you
pawn
can't
hanging.
bluff him. Because
No.
with no time on the clock, he took on a6.
Wow. It just said, okay.
I also don't get it, though.
But the problem for black is the desirable. He's trying to get a blockade. He's trying to play for b6, b5, but he doesn't want to give white one of the pawns is going through. But white's saying, look, I'm ready to play c4, d5, and it's just lights out.
Yeah.
So a6 was.
And rook a8 was
little
played.
bit- a
Rook
little
a8
bit of
played.
a
Rook
bluff.
a8
Queen
along,
b6?
allowing queen b6. Now
That's
the c
pawn number
pawn is
2.
clearly hanging, and if that c pawn drops, man, those
It's
pawns.
over.
You're going to be begging to
you
maintain
have
some
to
kind
play
of
bishop
blockade.
d5.
So-
No choice. I mean, you may not like being pawns down. Who does? But at least in this case, you do have ideas of maybe trying to ensnare the queen. And again,
All on
if
the
you
board.
If you can get to play rook takes a4 and only be one pawn down, maybe some chances. But it sure looks like Grischuk
This is the game.
in control.
We're in the game. Bishop d5 was
Bishop
played.
d5
Okay.
played.
Sure looks like Grischuk's in control.
And they're still 9
here.
moves away from time control, so still quite a bit away from it.
44 seconds for Grischuk, though.
And counting?
He's counting.
And
But he's a pawn up.
Yeah, 2 at the moment.
At the moment, he will lose a4. I don't see a
Probably,
way
yeah.
to defend a4. Remember, the rook fb8 is currently quite a threat, I think,
Right.
in this position.
I would probably start with rook e1 myself, ready to give up my queen for the 2 rooks and maybe play queen.
Give up your
B.
queen for the 2 rooks. How kind of you.
What a giving man. I accept winning material.
I am known as being a generous person. That is correct. Okay, so Queen B, Rook B1 with the idea maybe Queen B7. So Rook A4, Queen
I'm sorry
B7.
to cut you off, Yasser,
Please.
but we have quick moves and we have to get
What
them.
happened?
Queen B2 was played
On the board.
and quickly Alexenko Rook
Capture?
takes A4. Absolutely. He still feels like he's just down a pawn.
Okay, so what?
Rook A1 played,
Okay,
which apparently the engine doesn't like, although I don't know why.
that's a very human move.
Maybe just
to
Rook
my mind.
FA8, and you're starting to get some counter. The good thing about Alexenko's position, he got his blockade.
Yes.
You're down a pawn, but now C4's not coming, D5's not coming.
That's right.
The bishop on E3 is bad. So strategically, his position has improved a lot.
For one pawn.
For one pawn.
Yes.
So
It was a good gambit.
Yeah, in some ways.
Yeah.
This is
Maurice,
gonna be a
over to
lot of
you.
Quick action there, no
Yeah.
question about it. Just
Ooh,
quickly
no.
jumping over to this
Queen
game,
trade.
it looks like a queen trade did occur. Fabi trading queens. This one now, I think we'll just agree, should be drawn.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like he can win this pawn without dropping his A pawn. So just a brief breaking news, it looks like this one should be a draw.
Well, that queen trade, well, I'm not pleased with that. Back to Grischuk for just a second. The engine didn't like Rook A1. Did it have an alternative? What was the alternative that was? I mean, I'm looking at Rook A2. That was why I played Rook A1 kind of like by hand, right? Just to stop Rook A2.
I'm not really sure.
Okay, he did play Rook A1, and do we have a move?
Yes,
by-
Rook FA8 played.
Okay, makes sense.
We have to defend the rook, and you want to play Rook A2 still.
Exactly.
It's becoming sharp. Because Rook A2 is a threat, and I'm trying to figure out how to defend against it.
Well, if I trade all the rooks off the board, Alejandro, you think that is giving black too many drawing
I mean, the problem is that if I take and I take and I take on
this
G2,
bishop on E3 is not the greatest piece of the world.
the greatest piece in the world, no.
No.
Light
I
square
understand.
blockade, hard to break.
Not
right?
only that, the king on G1 or G2 is going to be very vulnerable. Queen D5 check, then Queen E4 is going to come into the position. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah,
my
I mean,
king's
great
very weak.
compensation for the pawn.
Yeah,
Great
suddenly he's turned it around.
Wow.
Well, you know, when you have to play quickly,
Well-
which Grischuk did have to do, you don't find the most accurate moves necessarily.
Maybe Queen B2 was maybe just not the move.
At some point, something went wrong. But Maurice,
Yes.
Yes. While that's going, there's still going to be a lot of moves there. This one has made time control. The one between Nepo and Giri, and this one Rook H8, E4, Rook to H8, and Rook to Rook to D8 with check. King dropping back, and now the move Bishop to D1. He's trying against all hope is Giri to make sure the move E3 doesn't crack his position open.
Exactly.
This one will just so wreck everything. So he had to play bishop to D1. So it's a visual move because you got the rook hanging and the bishop now attacking the queen. The queen has options of where to go. It looks like F5 is the best square. I think it would love to stay on this third rank so you can still get this move E3. And I'm curious as to why. And they've made the 40th, and this is the 41st move. This move looks like it makes a lot of sense. Apparently, rook to D4 hits this pawn, and now you can't play E3 because of rook.
well, the move I like is
check.
Queen C3, very similar.
Exactly.
But I keep Queen E1 and maybe also E3 on top.
And stop the Rook D4.
That's a good looking move, and the engines approve. As a matter of fact, Queen C3, very strong looking move to keep a lot of control over the game. You do leave this pawn on H5, but E3 is going to be such an explosive move with the Queen E1 threat. That looks tough.
Well,
I would bet Giri is going to lose this game because it's so hard to hold up against all these threats and a perfectly animated queen that just looks like it's not just animated but dynamic, going to cause some huge explosions in White's position.
The Grischuk game is going exactly as we thought. All the rooks have been traded, and bishop takes G2 on tap. So we were talking about that weakness of the king, giving Alexenko great chances to hold. But we do have a phone call from Omaha. Let's see if we can get connected. Hello, tell us your name and your question.
This is Carlos from Omaha.
Hi,
Carlos.
First of all, I got an interesting comment for you guys. You are by far the best team that I've seen commenting on chess, and that you guys have like 3 different playing styles. So basically, over one game, we get 3 different perspectives over it, and nobody is so like ego that y'all step on each other. So y'all kind of hit everyone in that, everybody can see their playing style. But my question is regarding a player like MVL, and then let's take a Fabi or a Jeffrey Zong, Fabi and Jeffrey Zong will play just about any and everything on any given day and play it, like, really good. And then you have an MVL who say, hey, I'm a sitting target. Come get me. This is mine. It's in my backyard. What you got for me? And I'm curious for you guys, kind of a two-part question. The pros and cons of those type of players, and then secondly, in your heyday when you was playing, which type of player would you like to play against and why? And I'll take my answer off there.
Carlos, thank you
That's a
for
great question. Yasser,
and the great comments.
I think we should put at least one of the games up on the board while we're doing this analysis. I think this one is kind of dead. Let's just go to any of them.
The Chinese game is great.
Any of them. And I'll take the first crack at it because I recently... Carlos' question is just great. I recently read this book about Vishianand's life as a chess player. And he actually mentioned that there were two types of players. The ones that go very narrow and super deep, and the ones that go super wide, but the depth, there's just not enough time.
Maybe shallow.
Right. And what he said is also stylistically they're both difficult. It just depends who you are, who you mesh better against. That you have to have a little bit of both at the very top. Now, of course, Maxime is the greatest exception to this because he is incredibly narrow. Now, personally, I like the wider players because I feel I have understanding of a lot of positions, but my depth isn't quite there. When I meet somebody that's very entrenched in their repertoire, I have a lot of problems breaking it. Whereas when I get interesting positions against people with a wide variety of styles and repertoires, I think I can fight better. But it really does come down to personal style. Who do you match better against? Some players do better against MVL, some players do worse.
Yourself, how would you describe yourself? Deep and narrow, or wide and maybe a little shallow?
Definitely on the wide side. I have done deep preparations in my past when I was a more active player, but always like to experiment. I was always getting bored with just playing one opening, which means I never really understood any of them. Because you play a lot, you don't get this familiarity.
So you like a big mix. And yourself, Maurice?
Wild and shallow, baby. Just play some stuff and swing.
Let's swing. I was more narrow. Now, for me today, right now, I look at Magnus Carlsen and I just go, wow. The guy just plays everything. And it ain't shallow. I mean, it's amazing.
And that was a big leap when he became #1 in the world. He was still known as somebody that didn't have that exquisite opening preparation. He was known as somebody that played everything. And then he added that element. He added that deep preparation to a lot of these things, coming up with novelties. I remember that game in one of the Grand Chessers he played against Liren with the black pieces and a Catalan, just uncorking this excellent novelty and just blowing Liren off the board. He added that element, and he just became unstoppable for a while. And that is the kind of transitions that's difficult for players to make, but Magnus has been able to do it, and that's one of the reasons he keeps at the top, because you need to change. You don't get to the top and do whatever you've been doing and keep at the top. You need to change, you need to evolve, you need to keep putting new ideas on the chessboard, and that's what he's done.
Well, for me, Garry Kasparov was a remarkably hard worker. I mean, he kept coming up with opening novelties. He's #1 in the world for 20 years. I mean, come on. And like you say, I mean, he kept mostly E4, but boy, those matches with Karpov, he could add D4, and he widened the net. Over to you, Maurice, and the matchup with, Fabi.
Well, we have some breaking news. This game, as we suspected, did end in a draw. Game has concluded, MVL and Fabiano Caruana. So MVL has shown, yes, indeed, I can play the favorites in the event. I may get into a little bit of trouble, but you got to beat me. And we know he's a hard man to beat. You try to put your hand on him. Magnus Carlsen saw that a few times in London. That just happened, the finals of the Grand Chess Tour. And MVL, I mean, slippery as an eel is this man. Very difficult to beat. Will he get the wins that he needs? Right now, he doesn't care. It's a 14-round event. And usually, The score that wins this event, the normal score to win, +3. +3. We're talking 14 games. +3 is what normally wins this event. Fabi did go +4 when he won, but +3 is all you need normally to take first. And in a couple of cases, to clear first.
Let's remember that when Fabi won with +4, +3 was also good enough.
Exactly.
Yeah, he didn't actually need that last win. And +3 was good enough.
He played to that. So these players know it's a long haul. They're in it for the long haul. +3 is all they need. So a draw is not a bad starting result. But the game to watch is this one, and it's happened. By the way, I want to just go back just a moment.
What is going on?
We talk about pragmatism. In this moment here, the move Bishop H4, guess what? The engine was screaming for this move. Bishop takes H4. Right now, you can play it. But he played Rook D4. It was move 37. This is the most important point I should make. He played Rook D4, Knight C2. He played Rook D5, Knight E3, and then he played his Rook back to D7, move 39. He couldn't get all the way to where he wanted to. Now, the Indians have a very sharp move here, D4, which apparently liquidates the game and puts White back in business to get a draw. We can get into that. But instead, move 40, it's been a quiet move. He said, Rook D2, I don't want to do anything dramatic. And suddenly, Bishop H4 lands on the board. Now, his initial point, no doubt, was this move, Rook to H2. He had a Rook H1 sighting before. Now this move, Rook G3 check can happen. And after, like, where do you put your king? It looks like King E2 is the most logical move. But the move G5 appears out of nowhere. And whoops.
Whoa.
This one is all black. Ding Liren might go down. In trouble right now. Imagine one of the favorites to win. And by the bookies, I can tell you, I looked at it before I came here.
Right.
The bookies were saying Ding Liren by a little bit. All those calculations, Ding Liren by a little bit. I say, what about Fabi? Nope, Ding Liren by a little bit. All their calculations, their simulations. Well, don't lose the first round or you're going to have to pull off a towel because nobody has lost the first round in the candidates in this format and come back and won the tournament. And your countrymen being so rude? Like, seriously?
Stepping on me like that?
Like, seriously? We are homeboys, right? I mean, we played in the Olympiads. We've won Olympiads together. And you come in the first round. Bing! Well, that's what's happening to Ding Liren right now as Wang Hao is chasing him down.
Wang
There
Hao
could be
doing-
some hurt feelings if that were to happen.
And Wang Hao is one of those players that got most affected by the pandemic that we're dealing with.
He was in Japan.
He was in Japan. He was taking a little bit of a tour in Japan, just having a great old merry time before going back and training with his seconds in China.
Okay.
And suddenly, he couldn't exit Japan. He couldn't go back to China. So he couldn't actually train in person. His seconds are currently stuck in China.
Okay.
They were supposed to go to Russia with him, but they were already quarantined, and Wang Hao said, look, they've already been quarantined in China. I can't put them through that again because they would have had to stay in Russia quarantined for another 2 weeks. So he was like, that's too much. I'm just going to go solo, do everything remotely.
Wow.
But he's bringing home the power.
Well, that move G5, nice. After one result.
A draw expected, and I was looking at the Grischuk game. They've made time control, but I don't see. I think Grischuk's done. I think
no advantage.
No advantage at all.
I'm seeing a perpetual check actually appearing on the board.
And Alexenko is thinking if there's more.
Absolutely. Why not think if there's more?
Why not, right?
You no longer can lose this game because you have this queen and bishop combo chasing a king that wanted security, but has none of it right now. Where would you hide your king? If I told you, put your king on a safe square, someplace you'd like to be, I don't think you could easily find that square. Maybe.
I don't think it exists.
I don't think it exists. Well, unless my queen is sitting on D6 and I can play like king on D7 or something.
That's a big
and that's a tall order in this position. Because your bishop on E3 is horrible.
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to say. The bishop on E3. I was a pawn up, I was pushing, and now I got this position. I'm very unhappy.
If I'm the trainer of Alexander Grischuk, and I know the guy's going to play the candidates, I go to whatever sage I can and say, please, how do I fix this guy's time trouble?
I know.
Because it just costs him so much.
I know.
He had such a wonderful position.
Exactly.
Give the guy enough time, he'll convert it. But what happened? Some complications happened. He was under a couple of threats. He had to take the safe route because guess what? There are threats coming. Rook A2. Doesn't want to blunder anything.
Right.
But he also lost his advantage.
He did. It slipped, and it slipped precipitously. Probably Queen B2 is already a step in the wrong direction. I don't really like the idea of trading off all 4 rooks, because the more the pieces come off, well, look at what's remaining, and what's remaining is this really septic bishop on E3, which is really playing a defensive role, Maurice.
And a dream of mine has come true. It was like a little fantasy variation, but it looks like it has happened or will happen in this game. Check it out, guys. We were talking about White saying, I'm almost drawing. It's almost a fortress, right? Over here, it's so close. That was a few moves ago. But the bishop and the pawn, if only I could give up the bishop and the pawn for that fortress. If I could say, these are kind of fantasies that we have as players when we look at positions. The guy gave him the fantasy. He played H4, took it, and then he played F5, saying, you can't take that. I'm going to win your bishop.
Check. Yeah.
Except what if I do take it? You check me, I move, you got yours, I check you, you move, I take mine.
Just a draw, right?
Dead draw.
This is as dead a draw as you're going to get. This pin clearly doesn't work because of F3, and I'm not losing this forever. This is the line now. It looks like Nepo has simply gifted his opponent a straightforward fortress. This should be drawn. The engines are giving advantage to black. I don't even understand why, but this engine doesn't see that this is just simply dead even, and there's no way to win this position. Looks like if Giri's studying it carefully so he doesn't somehow lose his rook by accident after rook takes F5. That's the only thing you would be worried about, that after you take here, there's not another move to play in this position. I don't see what that is. It looks like he should be safe. The rook doesn't look like it possibly hang, even after a move like maybe E3. Well, it just seems that he should be able to play anything almost. What am I looking for in this position, guys?
I do have to correct you, Maurice.
Yes?
The table base says that position's lost.
Which one?
With
The one
F3.
with the pawns on F3 and H4.
Get out. This one's lost?
Yeah, if you take on A2 with check.
Get out. And?
I don't know, it just says made in 72.
Wow. You got me there, because this one looks so drawn.
I was about to say, for me, the culprit was you move F2, F3.
Yes.
I think you need
the pawn on F2. There's some reason
and then
why
it's a draw.
Yeah.
But what I was taught is that after the move F2, F3, you get behind the king.
Somehow the queen gets behind and zugzwangs you.
Exactly.
That's what I was taught as well, because that's why I looked it up.
But you leave the pawn on F2, and you put the rook on E3 and G3, and it's a
okay, that's a subtlety you guys knew that I didn't. Queen takes with check.
Why
this position, I would have said this
king F5
would be fine.
Of course.
But you can't play king F3. So if that's the case, then you are in fact losing. This is deep. It's certainly out of my knowledge base. And the database is saying that this is actually winning. So then if Giri knows that, then he cannot take on F5 because he has to play this F3 move. And then that means that Nepo is playing amazing, wonderfully deep chess, certainly deeper than I supposed. That's some good stuff. Yeah. This looks so equal. The rook can go back and forth between these two squares. Somehow the king can make that penetration happen.
Yeah.
That's impressive. You guys got to show me this one.
Well, I mean, the mate in 72 was a little bit hard for me, but I saw them.
A little bit hard. Tell us, Dr. Seirawan.
It was an 8 and 50, I thought. that was on tap. Ooh. Can we see the all-Chinese matchup, too? Because that is, I mean, for me, that is just such a huge result. Because I saw Ding Liren.
And the big point is this last move. This is a variation, by the way, that could have happened if he had taken bishop takes on H4 the first time. If you go back before he started this stuff with his rooks.
Stuff.
Yeah, back even for, so
Rook A2
here, after Rook A2. After Bishop, no, now we can go forward. Bishop D8, Rook A2. The point being that if the Bishop takes H4.
In this exact moment, yeah.
Then there's a Rook H2 that's possible here.
Okay.
Right? And with the Rook on D1, its position changes a bit in this line. The Indian gives the best move here as rook g4, not rook g3. Rook g4, and if you take now, knight takes, pawn takes with check.
Which one?
The
That was my
H-pawn,
question.
the H-pawn.
H-pawn, sorry.
Yes, the H-pawn. And now giving king e2 as the next move.
Maybe just g5.
And then he has just simply bishop g, not simply, the move bishop g3. And the game gets out of hand because after rook h8, takes on f4.
Rook b8.
Rook b8. Correct. And now king takes on e5, rook takes on b6, rook d4, and we're in wild country where
all three results are possible.
Anything's
here.
possible, but Indian's giving much better for black. Like black's pass pawns are going to be way too strong, and they're rolling down the board, and you just have your 1b pawn. So this is crazy chess for sure. But now we have a similar type situation on the board as he has played rook g4, sacrificing the exchange the second time around. Now getting this opportunity, he's played this move rook to g4 and saying, let's get wild. Let's get crazy. And you don't have your counterplay on the H file, so I'm just capturing and getting a great pawn formation against your opposition.
So something very similar to the line that you showed has just appeared on the board. He just played rook g4 and inviting takes and takes with the H pawn. Wow.
By the way, Giri is going straight into that line, guys.
With f2, f3 on the board?
Well, no, we haven't gotten that far just yet, but he has given up his bishop.
Okay.
Well, it's going to be
taking
forced.
all the pawns.
He's going to have to take the pawn. He's going to have to go down the line. So he's making the mistake I made.
Well, I was actually wondering if you can draw by keeping the pawn on life and going like rook g5, rook g3.
Okay, I'm going to turn to that game just shortly after this. My feeling is that this is actually really good for black. I mean,
lost.
it just exactly.
The visual appeal is that there's too many pawns.
And it's not just that. It's just that once you see this move g5, and the fact that the e5 pawn is falling, the fact that rook d4 is on tap.
Resignable.
This is lost completely.
It's
lost.
Resignable.
Yeah. Exactly. So this
no resistance possible. That's the
would be a huge upset.
Wow.
Because Ding Liren comes into this, well, as you say, a pre-tournament favorite. And to lose with white pieces against your countrymen in round one.
By the way, after
goodness.
you see this result and you go back to, do you take the top two players or do you take the field?
Yes.
The
field starts looking a lot better, doesn't it?
That's right. By the way, the games between the two Russians has indeed ended in a draw.
Well,
that's a big comeback by the young man who nobody is giving any chances whatsoever.
Right.
Kirill is saying, you can hate if you want to, but I got here and I'm going to make the best of it. And he did say in a quote before this tournament, he said, I'm here to win. I plan to win. That's my goal. And what else should he be thinking? Because second place gets you nothing. Gets you some money, but that's not what you want. You want the real dollars that you're going to get challenging Magnus Carlsen. What an upset it would be if he would be probably the least likely player to win one of these. Actually, when I think about it, he would be the least likely in this round-robin format to ever win.
Right.
Karyakin is probably currently the odds-on favorite to hold that unfavorite title. So as an underdog, this would be incredible, simply. So we'll see. He's got a long way to go drawing his first game. Doesn't mean that much with 13 more rounds and a lot of gangsters to see. This one, on the other hand, man, after seeing that, your man said, nah, I got no time to take the rook yet. Let me play something else, because taking the rook is dead loss. So he played the move rook to h2. Ding Liren now needing to hang on by his fingernails.
But doesn't that run into the variation you had showed us earlier, rook g3 check and g5?
Sure does.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's dead, right?
Yeah.
I mean, g5, this is monstrous.
Right.
This is going to be monstrous. You're likely to take here. Bishop takes. Sorry, your knight's hanging, so no time to grab this back. Whatever knight move you make, h4 is on tap. Your pawn on d3 is falling. I mean, it's a nightmare.
Disaster.
It's a complete disaster. Ding Liren is reeling right now, seeing himself lose the very first game of the tournament. What must this young man be thinking?
And with white.
Exactly.
With white, yes.
I just also want to clue in our audience that we do have Leonard Otis over in Russia, and we're going to come to him at various moments in the show to bring us what's going on the ground there and hopefully maybe even grab a player or two. We do have 2 results so far, 2 draws.
2 draws.
And we're looking at the potential for 2 wins.
For the black side, both of them.
Wow.
We're going to have a certainly long game between Anish Giri and Nepomniachtchi, as we can see the standings after 2 games finished in the tournament. 2 draws. Solid one between Fabi and Maxime. There was some craziness near the middle, but it eventually evolved solid until it was eventually drawn. Grischuk is going to be kicking himself because he needed this half point. He was playing the lowest rated player. He's playing somebody where he had just such a crushing position.
Exactly.
And he's saying, where did it go? What
Right.
happened? Why did I draw?
And I think you said it very well yourself. It was the time trouble issue. You get more time to really think about that position, Queen B2, and he just kind of played by hand, and he didn't seize his advantage. Maurice.
Big news, guys. Did happen. Giri understood that he couldn't take this pawn, and he went for the other blockade, the one we all know and love, with the rook on G3, ready to shuttle back and forth on this square. If he can get his rook back to G3, then it's going to be difficult for the king to penetrate. This is a position on the board. Alejandro, tell me now that this is a draw, please, according to table base, if you take the A-pawn, because the rook on G3 does seem like it should be comfortable enough to make it happen.
Yeah, but there's an E4 pawn on
There's an E4 pawn. If you remove the pawns from H4 and A2, and you put the rook on E3,
Okay.
let's just magically do that, because let's say that H-pawn can't really be held.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you remove H4 and A2, put the rook on E3, it's lost.
Okay, let's just do that. We're just making moves. Sorry, I apologize, but we're just going to make some moves. So we're going to get to the position that you're describing as lost.
And we're going to lose H4 magically.
As well. Sweet. I'm going to go
the quickest way.
Let's go attack the guy.
Yeah.
And
let's say we get into this position.
Yeah,
This is lost. Why? I don't know. But it's lost.
it's not the maiden 70 again, is it?
Oh, please, Yasser, this is 62.
Thank you.
I thought you knew these positions. Yes.
Well-
we're relying on you.
Okay, I don't know how to break it down.
The way you break it down is that rook E3, G3 is usually the only safe squares for the rook. And at some point, the pawn endgame is actually lost because the pawn's already on E4. So if you imagine that I sacrifice my queen.
Right, that's the case. So that means you can't
I go
avoid
king
because
here,
of Zugzwang of some kind?
and I go king here, and you're saying
For
at
example,
some moment there might be a queen takes?
Oh, yeah.
At some point, a queen takes works. Like, first of all, you shouldn't go through F4. You go through D4. So you always have that extra one tempo, for example.
Okay, so I go, I go here, you go here, I go here.
Yeah, we're just putting moves. We know F3 was a move, but just to emphasize.
Exactly.
Check here, and you go queen C1, something like this.
Okay.
And now you run out of moves.
Suddenly I can't play rook E3, so I have to go to a square where I'm not defended.
Let's just point that out, by the way. So there's some fans who just want to see it.
So rook G3 allows the immediate king and pawn ending, and if white's king, unfortunately, cannot stand in front of the pawn.
Right.
Even if it could, it's lost, right?
Yes, exactly. The king's already on the 6th rank. So that was why we couldn't play the move rook E3.
Right.
But then we can just chill and say, okay, break me down further.
Excellent. And now, I have no idea. I just know it's
step
lost.
one. Okay.
I have no idea.
This is a 2-step, and it sounds to me like there's going to be a process.
Yes.
So you're breaking down white's first line of defense, and then there's going to be a second line of defense.
How do you make progress?
Okay, I'm going to show you.
What the heck?
You transfer the king. That's what it is. You transfer the king to D2. How? You put the queen on D3.
Now you're talking.
Now
you're talking chess.
That's the plan.
That's good
So
stuff.
I get here.
And then
That's
king
good
C3,
stuff. And then
king
bring the king
D2.
around.
Okay.
You never can take. You're always too slow. You're
just
putting in moves.
Right.
And then with the king behind, and once the king gets to E2,
then I can target the D.
now you're dead.
Toast.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I can just go for king E2.
Queen D4, you attack.
That's a
F2.
nice. So
Right.
you put the queen on D3.
No, actually,
it's a bridge, so you get to play king C3. Very pretty. Sorry, Maurice.
And it's funny in that position. Go back. Go forward. I had an idea, but it didn't work, which was kind of. A way to lose for black. Now you're behind. Go back to your variation that you were just sitting on with the king already in the position.
Ooh, sorry.
Just take us forward through the queen D3 position.
I don't know. I got there. Sorry, Maurice.
Just put the queen on D3.
There it is. There.
Yeah, queen D1.
Right here.
Go for
Queen D1, yes. Just
Queen
play
D1.
Queen D1.
Just
Yeah.
and then
And rook moves.
Okay, rook to E3. Oops, come here to me. Rook to G3. Oops, queen
I think it's black
D3.
to move, yeah.
So we want to play queen D3, right?
Yeah, of course. And then they keep going. Rook just keep shuttling.
King D2 to
C3, we're saying, because you
rook
can't
E-
take on D3.
You can't take. Very important point. Pawn takes will win the game. So keep
because
going.
the pawn just promotes
Just
too
too
quickly.
fast.
Yes.
Right.
I just want to go to a position that's funny here because I like clarity for the audience. We
Please,
sometimes GMs get ahead of ourselves and we
Right.
say, oh yeah, just this, it's over, boom, 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 and the audience is like, wait, slow
Wait,
down.
yeah,
right?
you lost me.
All right, so here we said a move like rook h3 fails.
Maybe just queen takes, huh?
Just take it, exactly, and then just take the pawn. So that's an important line to note. Pawn just promotes easily. And rook e3 fails
You take
Just
it.
take.
as well because of the capture. So rook g3,
Yeah.
and now
You can't play queen.
And this is a win.
Just
yeah, so,
just
but
the
rook
win.
g3 is the key move.
well, the rook is on G3.
Oh, so then let's play king g1.
Right.
Right? What
No,
if
but this is, you take on G3.
but
But,
then
this
you
is kind of the point. This is already a Zugzwang.
this is already see. I just want to make all the moves. No, king g1 allows this capture
Yeah.
again.
It's funny because you guys like the capture, and I like that too. But I was thinking,
Also winning.
Well, this takes a little time though because rook g2.
You still have to break this.
You still have to break him. So
that's okay.
It's too much
okay,
work. You can just take.
I
But it
think
is winning.
Yes,
Yes.
but no, I agree with you. Now I will absolutely take it back, and I agree that this is the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're going to queen
With
extra time.
check and
Yeah, it looks
there's
lost.
yes.
And finally, yeah, if you move the rook up, it's important to know you can't leave the king back on g2.
Oh, sorry.
The king on g2. You can't move the rook up because queen f3 wins the pawn on
F2 at
on
once.
f2
Yeah.
right away. So that clears all the cobwebs out.
Right.
All right. That's important. We understand. This queen d3 maneuver, Alejandro points out, is beautiful, very instructive, not just for you out there in audience land, but even for this GM who's never seen this concept before. Really nice idea, queen d3.
Yeah.
Well, really, when you look at it and you go, okay, how are you going to break white down? White's going to shuttle his rook back and forth, and you go, oh, you got a weakness on f2. You go, wait a minute, I don't have a weakness on f2. I can't attack it. The king is not crossing the third rank, and then you go, aha, that's the clue. You put the queen on d3,
Yes.
so your king can cross the third rank. That's a very instructive plan. Maurice, over to you. Oops.
Well,
not happening.
Just to
Well,
take a look.
I would say, yeah, this game, I'll take this
Sure.
before we go on break. Quick break. This position is still on the board. It's somewhat surprising that the move rook g3 check hasn't been played a long, long time ago.
Why? He has so much time. I love the approach. It's the candidates.
I understand that he has a lot
your
of time
time.
on the clock, but he played this. This move, bishop takes h4, was played before he got the second time control, right? It was his 40th move.
Right.
Then he got his extra time on the clock. He got an extra hour, am I right?
Yes.
It's plus an
50
hour.
minutes.
50 minutes.
50.
Let's go with yes.
Okay. He spent over 13 minutes right now
Well,
thinking about this position. I understand it's a candidate, it's important, but you do want to keep a little bit of pace as well. We saw what happened to Grischuk.
Yeah.
He had a completely dominant winning position in our eyes, and then he started using the typical Grischuk time technique.
Right, of
So
30
got
second
into
bonus.
pressure.
so what is Wang Hao thinking? And I think I have an answer.
And I'm curious,
Rook
why is he not happy with this move and this variation that looks so powerful? Check G5 looks so straightforward.
I was
I
thinking rook d4.
I was
You
actually
were
thinking G5 first.
Okay, let's put it on
but
the board.
also good. Also good.
But
G5. I mean,
I look at the position. I have two tempting options: Rook G3 and G5 to me.
Right.
And I stop and I consider Rook D4. I think temptation is there.
Right.
And it's one of those alarm bells for a chess player. How many times have we had wonderful positions? 3 moves look like they win, and the truth is, 2 of them do, and one of them doesn't. How many times do we choose?
Oh, man.
The one that
That
doesn't.
just sucks.
I mean,
You're bringing back nightmares.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Sometimes it's not good to have too much choice.
Yes.
It's good to just have a straightforward move. It works, good, let's go. Don't worry about the others.
I will tell you that you play at 2,800.
Yes.
You've got 3 winning moves. Except, as you say, only 2 of them win, and you choose the
Really
third.
win.
And they crawl right out that window that
Yeah.
you gave them, that opportunity. It's an interesting moment in this game between the 2 Chinese players because G5, like you say, Rook G3, and Rook D4 all look very...
They all look great.
Look really, really fine. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with more coverage of this first and exciting round of the 2020 candidates.
We'll be right back.
Can you hear it? It's the sound of hope and health and strength. It's the sound of compassion, of open doors, where people and machines are in tune and miracles occur. It's the sound of personalized healthcare and active communities. It sounds like life, and it's what you hear when you really listen.
Be surprised. Be intrigued. Be delighted. The World Chess Hall of Fame in St. Louis is nothing you'd expect and everything you love. 3 galleries highlight the history, culture, and creativity behind the game. Explore chess in ways you never imagined. It's a one-of-a-kind cultural institution where rare artifacts and world-class art play together. The World Chess Hall of Fame. Mind, art, experience.
St. Louis University is celebrating its 200th anniversary. Offering world-class education in the heart of St. Louis, SLU attracts students and professors from around the globe. In 2015, SLU partnered with the St. Louis Chess Club to start a top-tiered collegiate chess team. On the very first year of the team's inception, SLU obtained second best university at the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championships. Higher purpose, greater good. St. Louis University. And we are back here in the first round of the Candidates Tournament, where we already have two results, both games ending in a draw. Certainly Grischuk, the most upset player out of the four, as he had a huge advantage against Kirill Alexenko, but time trouble biting him yet again.
And he let it slip away. But having said we got two draws, I think we've got two wins that we're about to see to start this Candidates Tournament, as it looks like Anish Giri has slipped himself into a lost queen versus rook ending.
Yeah,
he's got some pawns. We were just arguing amongst ourselves. If Anish had gotten his rook to g3 and his pawn to a3, would he have survived? And the jury finally decided.
We think so, but we were not sure.
Exactly.
The other problem was that we didn't see a way to get there.
Right.
Even though that might be a draw, we didn't really find a way where you could actually preserve the pawn.
What do you mean? Queen b1 was played on the board.
Oh, Queen b1
was played. Why not a3
we were
right
thinking, a3 with the idea that we're going to jettison the h4 pawn down the line, but the idea was to maintain f2 and a3.
But I think
I'm not even jettisoning the h pawn. So
but I think here e3 should win.
Okay,
it doesn't matter how many pawns you have. If you don't have a fortress,
let's make a move. Okay, so king.
No, but now rook g3.
Oh, sorry, you wanted to play e3.
Because I want to break your fortresses.
Okay, so you think I should play e3 at once?
And I think that should win, yes.
Wow, and the rationale being
that when you get behind the pawn, it's the same thing as what we were talking about earlier. When the pawn's on f3, it's a loss, because there is a way to break this.
Okay, so I can have two pawns. I can have a pawn on a4 and h4.
And this is dead.
That's definitely not a fortress. That's not looking good.
Well, the thing is, once you have a pawn on the third and not on the second, there is no creation of a fortress.
Right.
Those don't exist anymore.
Okay.
So what Giri needs is that pawn on f2. And I think if you place a3, Nepo would have thrown in the move e3, knowing that no longer is a fortress possible. You would have to worry about a bunch of pawns, but it's a queen. The queen can capture a pawn whenever it feels like
the pawns
it.
are irrelevant. It's that security of that rook that's the problem.
And the rook is just not that secure. Eventually, you zugzwang white. Of course, this will take a long time, a lot of effort to breaking it, but it should be winning.
Okay.
And instead of that, Giri has gone into these positions that we had been analyzing, giving up the a2 pawn, putting the rook on g3.
Did he start with rook g3?
I think so.
Okay.
He took on a2.
Okay.
Logical. And if you lose h4, we just think this is dead.
Right.
And I don't think anything else matters.
Okay. After rook e3, obviously I'm looking at this pawn. I guess it's queen c2.
Queen c2, queen d5, I don't see why it matters. Again, it doesn't matter if you lose the pawn. If the pawn's not on f2, it's not a fortress.
Exactly.
That's the key of the position.
Right.
But Maurice, update us what happened in the Chinese duel, where we also expect Wang Hao to convert.
Indeed.
That might be technical. This is a beatdown. This is just spike and go home. Maybe you don't have to go home, but you're going to have to get the heck up out of here, because he's just getting rolled right now. G6 after much consideration is what Wang Hao played. The move knight takes g4, f takes g4, king to e3, bishop to e7, rook to ac2, and h4. Yes, I'm getting to that, because h4 happened in the game, and that's all you had to see. The move h4. You just stare at those two passed pawns. You see a king landing on f5. You see g5 could happen at any moment. You realize your rook can't stop two passers, and you say limply, thank you very much, congratulations, because this was a crush. What a win by Wang Hao, dominating. After having a difficult position, we saw the moment, I would go back to this critical moment in the game when rook d7 occurred, and very impatiently the move f4 was played. We thought it was best to get everything lined up, put a king here first, guard this pawn, prepare such a break. Instead, he played f4 immediately, and this move is the one that he missed, that he will be crying about. He missed his f5 shot that changed the whole complexion of the contest, allowed a rook to show up on g6. His h-pawn came under heavy fire, and he ended up losing the game to his countrymen. What a start. You want a surprise start? That's one for sure, as Wang Hao has now taken the lead in this tournament. Those are words you didn't expect anybody to say. He is now in clear first, but that's pending the game between Nepomniachtchi and Anish Giri.
Now let's talk about Wang Hao. When you think about top chess players, you can throw a lot of names like Giri and Viel. who is Wang Hao among them? And I have to say, extremely dangerous.
Yeah, that's right.
If he doesn't keep himself at the top 10, I don't even know if he's broken into top 10.
Well, I remember him as a junior player and an extraordinary talent. I mean,
Oh,
you go,
yes.
oh, you know, like the Wei's of the
Yes.
world, you thought to yourself, okay, this is a guy that's going to be, you know, in the top 10, just
Right.
as you described it. But then I think his path went into the academic world. He was chasing his degree and he was doing, it seemed to me that he got pulled out of chess. And then I was really stunned when he won and qualified. He won the Isle of Man.
Isle of Man.
Yeah, and qualified. And I said, well, like you just said, dangerous.
Very dangerous. He's beaten pretty much every top player. He has a great score against a lot of them. And as you said, for a few years, he wasn't focused on chess. He was focused
Right.
on himself, on academia. He loved video games. He loved traveling. He loved enjoying life.
Okay.
And he's
My kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He stepped away from the chess world for a bit.
Right.
And it seems that the candidates focused himself again. He had a lot of trouble preparing for this event.
Right.
But look at his play.
Exactly.
His play has been amazing today. He had a really iffy start to the game. I didn't like the way he started.
Right.
But then
Not
he
at all.
found every single resource perfect.
Right. Something similar with Jan Nepo, actually. Somebody like Nepo kind of got pulled away from the world of chess. Always,
Yes.
always a great talent. And it's interesting that they both came back to it. Maurice, jump in, please.
I'd like to say, let's not overstate this.
It's
result.
one round.
It is one round. He is a great player. He came into this tournament number 12 in the world. That's nothing to sneeze at. These kind of players can defeat a top player. It happens. We've seen Magnus go down to even lesser players than that. And in this game, he had difficulty. To me, the big story of this game is the move, the super impatient F4, or I guess they're clearly two stories. The impatient F4 by Liren. So just really surprising that you play a move like that, but then missing this shot F5. And then the incredible resourcefulness, direct play, powerful play. Once F5 happened, he found rook E6, rook G6. I think even we guys would be thinking, you're in trouble, man. I'm going to put my rook on G4. You're in a lot of trouble. And then he just simply rolled his opponent. And it happened very fast. It was cascading, which normally is what happens psychologically. You got the position under control. I got this guy. I'm going to play F4. This works. And then you see F5, and then you see rook E6 and rook G6, and it's just like punches to the face every move, and you just go down. And this is what happened to Liren. So at the moment, I'm going to say the jury's out. Wang Hao with a great start, to be sure. And by the way, let's make this point. Wang Hao now in first place. He is now a top 10 player. He's jumped into number 8 or 9 in the world. But one Liren is no longer a 2,800 after this game. In the live rating list, Liren has slipped just below 2,800. That can't feel as a great start for him either. And as we said, this kind of format, we've seen it 9 times already, this being the 10th, and only one player in history has ever lost the first round and qualified at the end, and that was Mikhail Tal back in 1959. We're going back a long time. Liren will have to buck history in order to pull this off. 60 years of history, in fact.
Also, a tournament that was
Thank
not
you,
14
Maurice.
rounds, was 28.
That's
It does
right.
give you a little bit more time to recover.
Well, he recovered immediately, by the way. Tal won.
did.
I think he won like 2 in a row, and then he went on that ridiculous 10 out of 12 streak, 10 wins and 2 draws. Also 7.5 out of 8 in between that. So, yeah, Tal bounced back pretty nicely.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
I think
10
he
plus.
lost it was at 50% for the
first 5 rounds.
Yeah.
You ain't got 28 rounds. You
Yeah,
get
right,
50%
exactly.
after
You
5.
got time to recover. H-pawn still on the board. From Anish's point of view,
Giri's tanking, and this is important. If he keeps the H-pawn alive by some magic of chess,
Hook or by crook.
yes.
yeah, then I think you can't win. But I don't think you can keep it alive. That's a big difficulty of the position.
Right, because I'm thinking, in a dream world, from White's perspective, you get the pawn to H6, you get the rook to H3, and your chances of drawing the game go way up,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
The thing is, this is a 7 move 7-piece position.
Right.
So
and it's in the table base.
It's in the table base somewhere. I don't have them with me.
Exactly.
But I know that
at your fingertips.
at my fingertips. I only have the 6th table base with me, but I know that this has been solved. I would be shocked if White's surviving this one, to be honest.
Well, we don't think so either.
It's political season, Yasser, and I know that Alejandro wasn't born when one Jesse Jackson was running for president.
Right.
And his famous slogan, Yasser, was?
The Rainbow Coalition? What?
He was part of the Rainbow Coalition, but it was 3 words. Always good to have just like 3 words, although this current president has used 4. But his was, keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive. And where's hope? That H-pawn, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep that H-pawn for hope. Harry the H-pawn. Keep hope alive is that H-pawn. If he can keep that pawn, then he's got chances. Without it, though, it's going to be tough. But how can you get zugged? It's so easy to get zugged in these types of positions. The queen just laughs at the rook because it's such a mobile piece by comparison. And it looks like that H-pawn may indeed drop. Again, I don't know either in this endgame, but I'm sure the table bases and everybody running out there in table base land can let us know exactly how this could happen.
Exactly. I'm looking at the move after queen takes a2, by the way. I'm looking at the move h5 immediately.
But queen d5 already wins the pawn, right?
Exactly. I was going to say that if you go queen e2, which is basically the type of situation I'm hoping for, yeah, that I'll be able to play h6, put my rook on h3 and tie down one of black's pieces, whether it be the queen or the king. As you pointed out, a very nice move, queen d5 row, because it's a dual threat. You're threatening not only to take the pawn on h5, you've got a discovered check with e3. Now, help me out here, Alejandro. I was going to play rook here to e3, so I'm dealing with one threat.
I would guess king f6.
King f6, and now, okay.
And remember, your rook's stuck, so I just attack with king g6. You still can't defend.
Okay, but
e3 looks lost.
E3 looks lost. Just a second.
No,
I was trying to
promote a queen. I promote a queen. 2 queens.
Yeah.
Checkmate.
Good point. Just the grandmaster camaraderie understanding here. I do, in fact, queen as white, but, well, I'm sorry to say that 2 black queens is plenty.
They're pretty dangerous.
And it looks like I get killed right away. Well, okay, I tried to hold on to the h-pawn.
He's finally made a move. He's played rook h3 in the position that we had.
Okay.
And I believe that Nepo instantly played the move queen d5.
Which, again, sets up this very nasty threat of e4, e3 check. And, okay, let's say I drop back. I want to maintain the rook on h3, so at least I can pretend that I'm supporting my h-pawn.
I'd play queen h5 here just to make sure you never even think about it while my king is walking up the board.
And then you get your king to, okay.
Just
Party pooper.
Just as a start.
Maybe we can refresh the board. We have a couple more moves. Just
just double click on the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there you go. So actually, this is the current position. King g2 just played.
Okay.
I think he went king f1, queen d1.
Oh, queen d5, king f1.
Yeah.
Okay, I said king g1. I think it actually would have just transposed.
Yeah, it seems like the same thing.
And
so this is the current position.
And now we've got probably queen g4 check.
It absolutely forces you to play king h2.
Exactly.
It just feels so zugzwangy.
I'm with you, Maurice.
Why don't you guys
I would just play queen h5.
I'm saying queen h5 looks so principled.
You know,
and your king is marching at least up.
I'll march up the board to where I will then be able to play queen g4 and zug you.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. You get the king on a great position, and then sooner or later you're going to
have to move the rook away from the h-pawn. Maybe to g4, actually. I could maybe put my king on g4. I'm not sure.
Not sure, because I always have rook g3 check, right?
Yeah.
Right, and you can't
ever take it.
Because of rook h3.
Yeah,
well, let's go for it.
Work here.
Let's go for it. Let's try and make some moves. We get to do it. The players have to calculate.
Yeah.
So king g2, king up the board.
I'm just hanging about. I'm waiting for you to decide what you're going to do. Okay, break it down. How do I do it? How does white? Now here, if you could magically play the move queen f1,
That's nice.
That would be nice.
But you
How do I
can't.
break this?
But you can't
Well,
play
you
queen,
said-
queen D1, king G2 is going to happen,
A queen D1, king G2. Yes,
right?
now
Because you can't
now,
play H5, right?
H5 is way too slow.
H5 allows queen
F1.
F1.
Yeah,
and
that must be
You're going to
right.
get
So I
ripped in half.
have to play king here. Right?
Let's just play it so the folks can see it. Queen D1, H5,
Yes. Queen D1, H5.
because we got time. So H5, Queen F1,
A lot of time.
H6. You're very close. Queen takes, king back.
And now you can,
And now you're going to play E3
yeah.
and spoil my party. Because now H7, you just push one more, and that's the end of that story.
Yeah,
right?
Alejandro convinced me that the two queens overcome the queen.
In that position,
I'm glad I was
might
able
agree.
to do that.
I agree.
Can I take a look at the game?
Please.
And I have a major question.
Okay.
Whoa,
If you double
he
click
just
on
gave up the
left
pawn.
side. But he didn't take it.
What did he do?
Why did he?
He
take
did
the
play
pawn?
queen H5.
No,
by
no.
the way.
He played check, then rook G3. And why did he not take the pawn?
Huh?
Somebody stronger than me. Explain to me. Why
I'm
did
not leaping to do that, but
Okay, but the table bases will tell you if queen takes H4 is a win or a draw now.
Yeah, it's a win.
It's a win.
it's 100%.
Yeah, now it's a win.
because of
So-
that whole queen D3
Yeah,
line
nothing
that
changes.
you showed.
I mean, what can possibly change, right?
No,
Nothing
exactly.
changes.
So queen H5.
What
this
a
is a
little bit of a mystery here.
Yeah,
I mean, you kind of want to capture the pawn, right? Do we
That's
have
their whole point.
I think that was the whole point.
Is there something
Something
wrong?
mystifying, I think, is the word.
That's odd indeed.
Yeah, because we were expecting king H2 because we had just
Because you
thought
have to
that
keep the pawn.
everything.
You have to keep hope alive. That's
Exactly.
right. Hope the H pawn has to stay on the board. And in this position, he's decided to leave the pawn on the board for the moment. But rook H3 can be played, and ask you to figure out how to win that position. That would be stunning.
Well, you go queen G4 and then rook G3.
Take the pawn back. But then why is Giri giving away the H pawn? Because the ending is lost. That's
He might not know it's lost.
well, you know what? I'm glad because you guys showed me earlier that I didn't really know the niceties of this ending. It's good to know that Giri may not either. So let's see how that works out because he's super strong. I'm sure Magnus is sitting back going, "Come on, guys, these are the exact endings I spend all my time looking at."
Right.
Because Magnus is the kind of guy going, "There's no fortress. There's never a fortress. I'm going to break you down some kind of way," and he eerily knows all these kinds of positions that you'd never think he would. Anybody would sit and study for hours and hours. I think Magnus, maybe he doesn't need that long, being the genius that he is. And he's like, no, I'm learning these because we're going to get in these positions against the elite players, and I want to be able to crack them in that 5th, 6th hour of play.
Yeah, he was one of those great players who really chiseled his endings, and as a very young player, in fact,
Oh, he was always scary in that news.
his maturity in the endgame was really, really remarkable. And the fact that he has this incredible memory also, makes him, I think, the greatest endgame player in the world. So, should this game be decisive? Remarkable start, guys. Two wins, 2 draws. That's
It's not
very,
just that
very
it's
nice.
2 wins. 2 wins with black.
Black.
That changes the character of the situation.
Right.
A lot of the players coming in with their great preparation with white, especially Giri. Giri proposes, let's sharpen it up. Let's go. I'm going to sacrifice some material. Look at all these cool ideas I had. Queen B1, rook takes H7. I'm going to mate Nepomniachtchi if he's not
Right.
careful. Suddenly, it all backfires.
It does.
He makes a couple of indecisive moves. Queen D3, for example. Suddenly, Nepo, he sees his chance. B5.
What a
boom,
shot.
Boom, boom, boom. And then he sees
Castles.
bishop takes E4, king G, beautiful, king
Nice.
G7. And then, on top of that, Giri must know, he still probably draws that rook and bishop endgame. But he
thought-
couldn't coordinate himself.
Yeah, and was it forced that he had to give up his queen, by the way? Because Also a remarkable decision, I felt.
At that point, it seemed that he was running out of options.
Okay, so that was a done deal, too. So again, we're talking about earlier in this game, everybody, right about these parts right here is where Anish decided that after the move rook b8, it was sensible to give up his queen for a rook and a bishop, and to try to make this position a draw. Well, as things unwound, it turned out that this bishop got sacrificed for a number of pawns. And again, Anish was on the back foot, and from this position, they've reached this ending, which we think is a win. Maurice, over to you.
And if we had to talk about the game of the round so far, period, I'm just going to give it the game of the round. To me, it's this one, right? The one that you guys were looking at right there, the one between Nepomniachtchi and Giri. Yes, this was a super important game. Yes, it's a decisive game. Yes, Wang played brilliantly once he got into trouble. And it was this position. Make another move for black, and white is still doing well. I mean, you argued that earlier, Alejandro, maybe off air. Make another move for black,
guys,
and white's doing well.
I get it. I just got everything.
What?
This endgame is only winning with the king on g2. If the king transfers to e2, you can't possibly break it down.
Whoa. Okay. We're going to come back to Anish Giri's
That's
game.
why he's not taking on h4.
All right, let me finish my point. I'll come back to you in a second. So this game really hinged on this moment, and after f5, okay, it was straightforward demolition after rook e6, rook g6, and even here, remember, we had this waste period of time after rook d1 where he played rook d4, and in the middle of it, he just got to move 40 before he finally took on h4. So once he played f5, it was only like 10 moves. Just whoop, and you were gone, right? It was a horrible move, f4, a big misassessment that caused him to go on tilt afterwards, and his position just simply collapsed. So kudos to Wang Hao. This game, though, by the way, has this other game, as you're describing, that this one with a king on e2 changes the complexion completely. Now, this one has everything. I mean, what a game. Layers on layers and layers of opening prep, followed by deep response, brilliant play with b5 and like craziness, the exchange sacrifice, now this wild ending, now you're pointing out technical issues with the pawn on h4, the king gets the e2. I mean, this game has all the stories. And now that you said that, we don't even know what the finish line is going to be because of that incredible resource. As you pointed out, Alejandro, it makes a ton of sense. If this king gets to here, a different kind. It's similar to the other fortress with this pawn over here. Interesting point. Now what? Now how does black win the game?
And that's why Nepo has him taking on h4, because he realizes that if the king gets to e2, and that's what happens. For example, the move rook a3 is currently on the board. Or we can even go back to this position, right? After queen g4, rook g3, queen takes h4 is just, I don't know if it's a blunder. I don't know if this position is winning or not. Queen takes h4, king f1.
And the idea is that with the king on e2 and you shuttle back and forth, you're not allowing that bridge of the queen on d3.
Yeah. So this,
as we try to puzzle this out, let's go to Russia and go to Leonard Otis, who has some updates from
Yekaterinburg.
Yeah. Welcome, guys. I just went. Yeah. Hey. Good morning. It's like 9 p.m. over here in the middle of Russia.
Good evening.
Thanks. It's an historical event. I've been traveling so much in the past 2-3 years. All the Grandchester events, all the other top events, and this is so weird. I've been in the playing hall alone with the 8 candidates and 2 arbiters. No spectators, no press allowed after 5 minutes. Sasha Grischuk, during his press conference, he said that he followed all the other 3 games very closely because he has nothing else to do during the game. and this whole coronavirus thing, it makes it so weird. And I'm so happy to be part of it.
I noticed, Leonard, that at the opening ceremony, somebody didn't get the memo, no congregation of 50 persons, because there was 1,000 people in the theater.
Yeah, so most of the people who were there in the theater, they also played the Karpov Cup. There were like a series of extra events next to the candidates planned, and they were named after Anatoly Karpov. And so there was like this huge open tournament with like hundreds and hundreds of players, and they all attended the opening ceremony as well.
Wow.
And when the players were asked if they wanted to join the opening ceremony, basically nobody really was eager to come. So we had an opening ceremony without any players. The sponsors were there. Arkady Dorkovich, Vice President, was there. I had to be there as well to take photos. And the opening ceremony was wonderful. There was like a dance performance, a lot of music, and I really enjoyed it. If it was safe, I'm not so sure. We get like medical tests twice a day. They check if I have a temperature. They check my throat. So far, everything has been good. I also got a coronavirus test, and I think everybody is negative, so that's a good thing. But yeah, I hope this opening ceremony was not destructive in any way.
Wow, what a situation. It's changed so much, and the players, they've also expressed their concerns.
Yes, of course. We had tell us a bit about the controversy of Timur Radjabov stepping out of the tournament because of his fears about the coronavirus, and FIDE's response and where.
Yeah, so of course I did not talk to Timur at all. So like all I know is what is written in the press. But like he was very early with expressing his concerns regarding the coronavirus. Right. And maybe the popular opinion was not in his favor back then. If he had waited a few more days when other sports events were already cancelled, maybe the verdict of FIDE might have been different. And but Timur was like, yeah, I really don't want to play in these circumstances. And he didn't really trust the measurements or the measures that FIDE was planning to do. So he decided to step out of the candidates, but it was like very early on, like it must be like more than 1.5 week or 2 weeks ago, I guess.
His deadline was March 6th.
Right.
To reply definitively, is he playing or is he not playing?
Yeah, so it's 11 days ago.
Yeah, well, quite a foresight, definitely.
Yeah, if he had waited maybe 4 more days, who knows what would have happened with the candidates. But now they invited MVL. And it would be very stressful for the whole World Championship cycle to postpone or cancel this tournament, because then you have 9 candidates, right?
Right.
What do you
now, Ding Liren, in order to avoid the quarantine coming from China, had actually gone to Russia early and been quarantined for 2 weeks. And I assume he had a fine experience. Nothing happened to him.
Yeah, so like he's here together with a coach and a delegation leader of the Chinese Federation. His parents are usually traveling with him. They are not here. He has no other seconds here. But yeah, he has been in the quarantine. He knew what he had to do, and he arrived in Russia in time. Right now, not a single foreigner is allowed to get into Russia.
They've locked down the country.
Yeah, exactly. So even if you folks like to come to Yekaterinburg, it's impossible. I actually hope that I will be able to fly out of the country to some place on April 5th. But yeah, that's for a later concern. And we have like a Spanish journalist, Leoncio Garcia. He arrived from Spain, I would say like 4 or 5 days ago. And that was already back then. There were measures for Spanish residents getting into Russia. So he's in quarantine in a hotel like 2 kilometers away from us, and he will be released in 10 days.
Wow!
Oh wow!
I think that changes the dynamic of so many things.
Exactly.
And just psychologically, it's difficult to even focus on the tournament.
Right.
Just imagine Fabiano Caruana. His parents are currently in Spain. They are elderly.
Yes.
They're exactly the difficult demographic, and
Right.
they're in the middle of everything. They're currently in a city, they live just outside Madrid, that's in a complete lockdown situation.
Wow.
How do you focus?
I understand. Leonard, one last question for you before we let you go. I mean, Sasha Grischuk, always a great interview, absolutely. Wang Hao, in the press conference, did Wang Hao go to a press conference?
Yes, he went there on his own. Then Liren decided not to join the press conference. I have to admit that I was preparing for this interview during his press conference, so I missed everything of it.
No problem. Just wasn't curious if he had a finger on the critical moment or not. But that's okay. We'll pick up.
No, I don't
from
have
there.
any information about it. Sorry.
Leonard, thank you for joining us. Keep in touch. Let us know what's going on. If any breaking news, we appreciate your sacrifice in going to Russia in these difficult times. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Looking forward to seeing you, my friend.
Yeah.
I'll always love traveling with you. We'll get back to it at some point for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, solve the problem for us.
By the way,
move, so
that,
we can
said,
just...
that said, I just want to go because I thought you had checked the table base, Sir Alejandro Ramirez, GM. You said you had a table base. Back here, I decided let me check it myself. And in this position, it does show definitively the only move to draw, King F1, and it does indeed draw. This is a done deal. You cannot take on H4 because King F1 and you proceed to create the blockade on the E2 square and it is just simply drawn. That is the dynamic. These guys are good, that good indeed, knowing all these nuances and differences. And that is the dynamic that Nepo faced. And that's why Giri allowed that position because he knows all the possibilities here. And so a new position has arisen on the board, if we can just get to it. And here the king is on the F4 square. But boy, Harry the H-pawn is saying, or I guess hope the H-pawn is what we're calling it now, as you can keep this H-pawn alive. This rook can always go to E3 if you try one of those funny business. And because the H-pawn is always threatening to go down the board, it's 4 moves away. So this king on the other side that was just winning easily earlier doesn't do the same anymore because the H-pawn will simply race to the back rank, and the king will have to go the other way instead of just queening this pawn. So no easy queen sacrifices is what Anish is saying. And this game suddenly is very rich.
I was about to say, if the game was adjourned, like in my old days, we would have discovered that we can't allow the king to E2. But the point is, these players are playing through. There's no adjournments here. No. And this is remarkable insight by Jan. This is really, really impressive. Like there was an old fogies tournament recently in Holland, 4 top players, Jan Timman, Anatoly Karpov, Robert Hubner, and Predrag Nikolic. Youth won. Nikolic won the event. And
what is he like, 62?
Yeah. But Anatoly said that, he felt that the older generation played endgames better thanks to the adjournment and the fact that the players have to play through and they're tired and sometimes they make endgame slips. It would have been an easy slip to play queen takes h4. I mean, everybody would play queen takes h4. And after king f1, discover to your horror,
whoops.
Yeah, no more win.
To e2, yeah.
And this is really good stuff.
So let's analyze the current position.
Yes.
It will boil down, can I win the h-pawn or can't I win the h-pawn without allowing the king coming to f1? So this is the question that we have.
The challenge.
Is it possible for black to pick up this guy without allowing the king to f1? Ideally, you take it with the king. Currently, of course, since Giri is keeping that rook on g3 and on g5, you can't actually make progress on the g file.
Right. Black's king is not going over here and munching. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need a plan.
Okay, so let's just play.
Also, by the way, you can't lose e4. That's also important.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
You can't just give up e4.
Right. We must maintain the pawn on e4. So I go queen e2 and say, oh, you're in Zugzwang.
Okay, but here, I play rook e3.
This is the problem we were talking about, the rook e3 move.
Right. So no rook g5 because of e3, right? And okay, so now you have to go rook e3, and the whole point is after check, you still can't take the pawn because of king f1, right?
Takes on g3, takes on g3, king e3, too fast.
Oh,
g4.
sorry.
Just to check that out, right? This kind of endgames don't actually win because Well, the pawn is just not enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
These kind of positions, you get the king to e2, and that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's an easy draw. But it's important to know the spawning games because you will see a lot of them when we do calculations. Which ones are winning and which ones are not winning.
Exactly. So we go back to this moment for just a moment, and I go, instead of check,
Okay.
I'll go back to h5.
By the way, this is the point
sorry.
I was making. I made this generalized point. Now you can show it specifically. The idea of queen takes e3 here.
Right.
So queen takes e3,
Now, there was
which
no H
always won.
When there
King
was no
takes-
h-pawn on the board.
Exactly. Now it turns out that this h-pawn queen's before yours.
It's just a draw.
And we just make an easy draw with queen versus queen.
Yeah, even by
Correct.
2 tempi.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Not even
Not
close.
even close. So this h-pawn staying on the board makes a huge difference to what normally would just be a simple winning endgame. Now you got the problem. The h-pawn, if you can't take the h-pawn and allow the blockade, and you can't take the rook and allow the h-pawn to fly, then what? How do you win? What's the plan?
So is there a way? What is our plan to pick this guy up?
Okay, so let me go here.
Okay, I'll play rook g3.
So the key is to take the pawn under the conditions where the king cannot go to f1.
Exactly.
Now you can't even play king e5 because of rook g5 check.
That is clear. Okay, I'm thinking I'll go here, but what have I really accomplished by getting my queen to d1 instead of h5?
Nothing.
You just returned. All you did was repeat the position there.
Right.
Well,
because I went
Zugzwang,
queen
you
e2.
did lose a
Yeah.
tempo, but
So supposing it was white to move here, well, rook e3.
Yep.
There's no...
because rook e3, you still don't have king g4. I'll take on e4, and we know that's a draw.
Exactly. Okay, how about I start with a move like queen d5?
And king f1.
I wanted you to play rook e3 so I could go king g. I thought I was being clever, by the way. I wanted you to allow this.
And now I'm in trouble. I'm losing that pawn.
Right, right. But king f1. And if I have to play queen d1, I've
just a
accomplished
repetition.
nothing. Okay, just
This
a
is just a
second.
draw.
No. I gotta believe that this.
Why?
I mean,
Why?
because the
Why?
queen
Yeah, and?
should be able to force a kind of a Zugzwang. Okay, if I provoke the pawn to go to h5, like how?
Yeah, well,
That's
you can
cool.
poke it. Yeah,
How
right.
do
I mean, that's
provoke the
cool and all,
pawn?
but how?
Yeah, if I go here, you
Rook
don't play
e3.
h5, you just go rook e3.
Yeah, maybe put it on b1.
Oh,
Maybe-
thank you.
Put it on
very
b1?
nice.
Very
Very
good.
good.
Uh-huh.
So now the pawn is defended. Rook e3 is met by king g4, and oops, there goes the blockade, the setup that you wanted.
We think, right?
We
It's
think.
not like it's over.
Right. I mean, now the king
Can't
the,
move.
the king can't move to because
Queen f1 will always be winning.
exactly.
It just breaks that blockade.
Totally. Okay, let me just refresh my board because a couple of moves have happened.
Yeah,
Oops,
double
excuse
click on
me.
the left side.
Oops, sorry. I clicked the wrong game. I apologize, everybody.
And
There we
this
go.
is the current position with white to move.
Right. The last move was queen d2, not queen d1 check and queen b1, but queen d2. Okay.
I think this position with queen b1 is pretty important. Let's try to defend this one because I think there's no other. There might be some other tries, but king g2 here looks like.
And queen
And we'll
d1.
get here somehow.
Right.
It doesn't matter how we get here.
Right.
The question is, can we find a move here for white?
Exactly. Now, we think any king move that allows queen f1, that's killing. A
What
rook
happens-
moves
what
that
happens
allow
if I play
king
h5?
g4. Pardon me?
What happens
And
if I
that's
play
the
h5?
question.
Well, we're kind of hoping that the weakness of the pawn, because the thing is, when I take on h5, you don't have king f1,
Right.
But
right?
now-
Because I have queen d1.
But look, he's not going to give. My plan is not to give you this pawn.
Oh, but you can just put it on h6, and how are you going to take it? As soon as you take it with the queen, I'll play king f1.
Right, and
It's done. Once the pawn reaches h6, it's a draw. I
right.
can't take it.
Right.
that's right.
So to be clear, everybody, what Alejandro is saying, once White's achieved this, now White doesn't even care to
about the
defend the pawn. He'll just bring his king back and achieve what we now know is a draw. With the king on e2 and the pawn on f2, the rook just shuttles back and forth, and there is no bridge that we've shown earlier.
And in fact, by the way, I'll argue I didn't have to give you the pawn. I could play rook h3.
It's an argument to be made, but at this point,
right? Once the pawn is all the way down, I play rook h3. You have zero way to make progress.
Yeah, once the pawn reaches h6, it's a draw.
Right.
I
So
think
all
I
of
think
that
we can
is
determine
drawn.
Exactly.
So everything is drawn there. And guess what? That
You can play h5.
That means that's what I was about to say. That means right now, why can't you just play h5?
h5 is just a draw.
Why isn't h5, h6 just a draw? Given all that we're saying right now, why can't you just push?
Well, queen d2 was on the position.
Yeah, no, this is the current position on the board.
No, the king's on g2.
What?
King's on g2 right now.
Oh, that was a new move then.
Yeah, and now we're wondering, can white just play?
So king g2 was played. Oh, h5 walks into queen d1 check.
Oh, no, now you get a check.
No,
now
king g2, and I'm threatening h5.
That's right.
That's what we're saying.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what we're saying.
So he has to deal with this because this pawn is just going to race.
Once it reaches h6, not a very far race, we know it's a draw.
Right.
Yep. Because the queen can't get back to d1 geometrically because the pawn's on h6. That's the critical point. The queen's on h5, then it can play queen d1 and not allow the white king, to get to that beautiful e2 square. But as long as it's on h6, you cannot do it with your queen. Your king's in the way. Unless you can get your king out of... Your king has to be on d4 then. But then how do you make progress?
Well, because of the move h5 is a threat,
He's played
queen d1.
I have to stop h5.
He had to. All right, now we need a move for white. And rook g3 seems like a move because you don't have king g4.
Right. So because we were thinking that we need to keep the pawn on e4, that this is a draw. This is an easy draw.
Easy draw.
Right.
So rook e3 is the move that I kind of expect.
And then we were thinking that in case black can always pick up the pawn on h4,
right. And no geometrics.
Anytime at the cost of allowing the king either to e1 or e2.
Exactly.
Now, do I have a better move after rook e3? Rook e3 played, by the way.
Only move.
So the question is...
This will be one of the great escapes that I've seen.
He just understood?
That's the key.
Amazing.
That's the key. Because remember I was saying this was a fantasy of mine, and then you guys showed that the position with the pawn on f3 was not correct.
Right.
But the fantasy was give up your bishop and then have just this fight. Right? But you have to know the particulars. It's good to have the fantasy and the dream that I had, but you also have to have the specifics as well to buttress the ideas. And Giri simply got it. He said, no, I understand what I'm aiming for. I know, yes, I'm going to give up the bishop. I'm going to create this kind of position. And guess what? It's a draw. The richness here, as we analyze further and further and dig, is showing just how remarkable this young man's knowledge is, and depth and insight. And also why it was really hard to beat him in that last candidacy was a part of when he drew all his games, which is hard to do. But he managed to pull it off because Giri is not a tough out. You're going to have to beat him, and he's proving here why it is so difficult. You get that big an advantage. I think that Nepo will see this. He'll be bitter afterwards. He'll say, come on, I had this one. Somehow, some way I should have won it. But it's proving to be next to impossible now that we see that the H-pawn is the force that changes everything about this position.
And sometimes you have that feeling that you missed it. You had it and you missed it. And
I'm not sure we missed it.
And it might just never been there.
Right.
I don't know, guys. There's a lot we had to go back to.
This looks pretty good. This looks pretty good, getting this out of that position.
Exactly.
I mean, what else can you really expect? You can't hold on to the F-pawn.
Right.
Realistically, right?
Yeah, a queen versus rook and a bishop, but you have this majority. You end up.
This is as good as it gets.
Exactly.
If we go back,
you win the bishop for a pawn or two. You
enter this endgame and you think, I get rid of the g3 pawn.
Right.
And I put it on h4, which is
excellent.
Strange.
Weakens the king.
Weakens that guy.
Yeah.
Probably will die. At some point.
Yeah. But here black is thinking, I get to win the bishop. I get to win the A2 pawn.
For my F pawn.
Only for the F6 pawn. Oh, no, by the way, I'll move the G3 pawn to H4, which is in my favor. If I leave the pawn on G3...
It's an obvious draw.
Yeah, exactly. So black does, the maximum that he can achieve.
No. There's a queen F5 here that was possible to keep the fight alive. Right here. Queen C3 looked like a great move because of everything that he accomplished. But queen F5, keeping the fight alive with everything on the board, was also very rich. Not clear that you can deal with this other plan of keeping.
But okay, why not rook D2 or something like this?
Rook D2, queen E5?
Yeah, queen F5, rook D2.
Okay, sorry, just a second. Queen F5, rook D2 is suggested.
I'll play like a lowly human.
Actually, even here, there's a possibility of H4 immediately. Keeping the queen on, keeping the dynamics alive.
But I take on H4.
Right, and then queen F4.
And I go, I'm just thinking on a good day, you'll win your F pawn for my bishop on D1 and my pawn on A2.
No, ho.
You're not even willing to give the
F6
F6 pawn for the bishop, is what you're saying.
I want the F6 pawn on F3.
Exactly.
That's a different pawn.
That's right.
That's a very different pawn.
Wow.
Fighting that pawn is going to be beastie.
Nice.
I'm not convinced. Can we keep going?
Sure,
because I am going to lose because I'm playing an engine.
Right.
But rook D2. Let's keep going.
Okay, yeah, because this was a very intriguing line.
H4.
H4.
I take queen F4, rook E2.
Rook E2, and Maurice is saying, look, I'm going to march with this pawn from F5 to F3, and I'm going to give you a checkmate. And I don't think he's wrong, Alejandro.
I don't know. If I put my pawn on an H5,
okay,
and then I put my bishop on C2.
You're saying you're going to make it very difficult for me to play F5,
Well,
F4.
I'm going to make it difficult for you to make that move too. So
you want me to take this guy?
But for example, this kind of positions, right? You go king E1, and I'm going to start threatening bishop takes E4 and A3.
I'm just not sure.
I'm actually bishop takes E4 instead of king E1. What was the problem with that?
And you're getting the very position that what we're trying to achieve.
Bishop takes E4. You can't checkmate me.
Yeah.
And then
go rookie.
No, not rook E3 because queen D1. Oh. No, actually that's fine. Rook E3, queen D1, king G2. I put the pawn on A3, and we know that's different. Which is what we wanted.
But also, you were suggesting that if you could just here you might get.
Here I have some problems because the king is in a very bad position. Queen F1.
Right.
And this looks really,
wow.
Really bad. But
guys, let's just go back to the real game. But that's.
I still think that was well within Giri's
remarkable.
Grasp. Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to be very, very curious after the game if Anish
actually had it all along.
Knew that this was a draw with a pawn on H4.
Or if he just figured it out. It's kind of hard to know this, right? It's not exactly the 100 basic endgames you know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just kind of thinking, I'm kind of proud of ourselves that we broke down just the F2 versus E4.
Yeah, we got that far.
Yeah, we were very, like, just a second, hold on, I'm still patting myself on the back. Not quite finished, but this is remarkable.
And by the way, even that endgame that you talked about, the pawn on A3 is different from the pawn on H4.
Yes, but we did think that with the queen D3 not being available anymore.
Because of the pawn on A3.
Yeah.
There's no
Because as soon as you go king D2, I can take the queen.
Let me go back to explain everybody what we're just talking about here.
Actually, as soon as you cross, I can play A4.
What we were thinking is that after a move like this, if black had gone for this type of a situation.
Yeah. And assuming the king doesn't get to E2.
Yes.
Just a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, we're going to make these assumptions that we were, let's say here. So with the pawn on A3, what that meant was that the king simply could not cross anymore with queen D3. So now we're hoping that the king could go here, the king could go here, and eventually target the H2 pawn. The fact that the pawn is on A3 means that we can. Do we take right away?
I think you have to wait.
You cannot take.
You cannot take right away. I think you wait for the king to be on D2. I don't think it works any other way.
So we go here, 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 here.
I think you wait on G3, but let's say that you get to this position.
Okay.
And here?
Now I have to take and go A4?
No, I don't know. That doesn't work.
No.
Hold on. You guys made a... Can I see something?
Yes.
We're back here. King on D4. Here. If I take on e3,
yeah, you probably want to wait on g3 with the rook. I don't think you can wait with e3. Here, let's show that you can take on e3 in this position.
Okay, so if I go king g1, I can take on e3 in this position.
Yeah, and what?
Because I just take, and I'm queening with check.
Queen with check, and even if you didn't queen with check, I think you're too fast.
No, don't do that.
Oh, sorry, that was a mouse slip.
No, king d2 is win.
King and t2, and this is the win because the pawn actually queens
with check.
With check.
Yes.
And
It's important that you queen with check.
It is important.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is actually important.
But you were saying that what you got to do is hang out with the rook on the g3 square.
Yeah.
So that when the king crosses,
you just chill. Rook e3, rook g3, rook e3, rook g3. As long as your king's on g2, I think you're okay. I think.
Because
Well, hold on.
What's your progress? I play rook e3, rook g3, and if you take on e3 with the passed a pawn,
Oh yeah, then
it's a draw.
Then you're one tempo behind because it's not check. The king's on g2.
So anytime you go here, I go here.
And now this is a draw.
That's right.
Now play
As long as your king's not on the first.
Play that out, please, because I'm sure some people are wondering.
Okay, sorry. Rook g3, king e2, rook e3 check, queen takes, pawn takes.
Yeah.
King
and a4.
And you don't get to queen.
And you're
with
behind.
check.
You're behind as white because you're on the fourth,
Yeah.
and black's already on the fifth. The problem is that the king is in front of this pawn and not just racing down the board. So now you equalize by being on your fifth, he's on his fifth, or she's on her fifth. At any rate, pawns queen simultaneously, and
Right.
there's no funny business that stops it.
There's no
So
checkmate.
with the pawn on a3,
pawn on a3
we're
is
thinking it's a
critical.
draw.
Critical.
Exactly.
We're not guaranteeing anything.
No.
But
But it
we
looks
think.
strong.
Right.
We think it's a draw, yeah.
Yeah.
Which means that it seems like a draw.
That it might have been a draw all along. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That bishop takes e4 at a certain moment. Wow. Okay. Well, I was saying Anisha's queen sacrifice was brilliant. Remember? I mean, wow. No, seriously, this is great stuff, guys.
Nah,
this
great
is
stuff.
why
Like, hanging on like a champion. Really.
I know. This is why these guys are the candidates. I mean, that is simply fantastic.
See, when I saw this position, I thought the h-pawn is irrelevant. I'll win it.
Right.
I didn't realize that when you win it, you lose such a critical square.
That's right.
Exactly.
You allow the king to come over. That was very instructive. We love.
We're up to date with the current position.
One of the great things, yes, I just want to make
Yes,
this point.
please.
One of the great things about being a commentator is you always have a chance to learn something. That's what I like. You're right in the front seat. Like, what more could I want than to be here with Grandmasters Alejandro Ramirez and Seirawan, looking at the greatest tournament in the world.
I know.
And being able to analyze positions that,
best job
that
in
I
the
didn't,
world,
that I
right?
didn't know intimately. I thought I knew, and then I was like, well, I didn't know this at all.
Yeah.
All those nuances, and then after everything's done, whoop, crystal clarity.
Yes.
And then I get to go back to my room and say, what? That was a nice day.
Yeah, look what
And
I
then
learned.
they pay us for this stuff.
I know, it's so good.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
I always thought that no matter how badly I teach, I always learn something. You know, how
I think we got
badly-
some good
and
stuff
it's
here.
like
This was
this
some good stuff.
commentating job. I mean, I've learned a lot.
That
and
today,
this
it's not every
ending
day
is-
that's like this, but today was certainly one of
Wow.
those
Very
days.
instructive.
For a technical position, I'm stunned at how the depth of this position. By the way, under a minute for
He's not
Anish
under a
Giri.
minute. He has another 15 minutes. We
Oh,
just haven't updated.
yeah, he gets
Yeah, he's
the
already
third
on
time
the third time control, so he's not under a minute.
Remind everybody again what the time controls are.
The time control is 100 minutes for the first 40 moves.
Got it.
Then you get another 50 minutes on move 40.
Okay.
And then you get another 15 minutes on move 60.
60.
Whereas we are right now, we're on move 62.
Right.
Or 67, sorry. Which means he's already gotten his extra 15 minutes.
Right. And every move that you complete by pressing the clock, I mean to say,
How did he win the pawn?
You get 30 seconds. What?
How did he win the pawn?
Did he win the pawn?
Yes, but how?
Well, he brought his...
Brought his king over.
Wait, what?
What?
We got
Okay,
problems.
hold on, guys.
But how did he get his king over? I thought you
Okay.
just keep with the king on f1 and g2.
Well, right here, he
Okay.
played the move rook h3.
And now we're going forward because it's a little confusing. But now we're
Exactly.
going forward. Yeah.
Right. And now
Oh,
Anish is saying...
but what? Before rook h3, when the king was on f6, did I have no move here?
That's what Jan was saying, that I've got you in Zugzwang.
No, but I can play rook e3. I need to target the pawn because you don't have king g6. right?
King G6.
Because King G6, I
rook
take on
takes
E4.
E4.
Thank you. That's.
No, this is the F3 position.
But is this with the H pawn
Yep.
Yeah, I think that this is
a win?
a win. I think so. I
You
mean, we
just
have
told
to check.
me this was a win. You told me that like 2 hours ago.
You got the table base, dude. Remember
doesn't
when
have
we
the
put it
table
in
base,
with the
but I will.
F3?
With the pawn on H4.
Yeah.
No, you need to find a 7 move. A
Okay,
7 piece.
what he did do, however, is he did allow the king to gobble the pawn, and he's played the move rook g3, and he's saying, hey, I've got your king cut, but wait a minute.
No.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. There's
whoa,
no
whoa,
way
whoa,
that
whoa,
holds.
whoa, whoa, whoa. So this was a huge blunder?
Or difficulty?
Why?
Well, there must be a better defense.
Okay, so rook e3. Why did he reject rook e3? We've been lauding the players, and suddenly...
No, but King G. What do you mean, King G6?
Yeah, King G6, I guess he didn't want to take on E4.
No, it's a loss. You
Well,
look
how
at-
is it a loss? I can play H5, for example. I have options. H5
What
take
do
with the queen.
Wait, what do you mean you just took on? What do you mean right here?
Like King G6, H5 I wanted to play, but you take with the queen.
Yeah, you
if you
don't
take
have-
with the king, rook takes E4, King F3, and then I'll manage my defenses.
This is what we've been discussing, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you
we've been
can't-
discussing
this is-
when we get this situation and we provoke the move F3.
And this is lost. I
This
know this
is
is
not
lost.
the fortress position. Yes, you take with the queen.
You
of
take with
course.
the queen.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know.
And there's no easy king.
The revelation just came. Like, I get it now. Oh.
So was he lost? Well, this is so confusing. It's lost now. Let's
Now
be
it's
completely
lost.
clear. Now we can say, because I have a table base in front of me, there is no doubt Giri is currently losing against Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Right.
This is a table base made in 25. No questions asked.
Okay.
The previous one, we have to actually figure it out with the 7 table base, which I don't have.
Right.
Hopefully Eric has one and can tell us the truth. What a confusing endgame. I thought it was a draw. Then he plays King F6, and I struggle.
magically shifts.
And then magically shift. I thought King F6 was just a move, right? There must be some way to deal with this.
Yeah, so like Jan, we got stuck right here, and we were kind of convincing ourselves that Anish had brilliantly created a fortress, and Jan said, well, I can break the fortress by bringing my king back
That's crazy.
and threatening after rook e3 to go king g6. And as it turns out, he ends up winning the pawn and
the king
winning
can't
the
get
game.
to F1.
And,
Now we get the whole queen d3
and
bridge.
he's going to have to let the king back in.
Exactly.
And now we get the endgame that we saw like 3 hours ago, where you put the queen on d3 and you penetrate.
Which is actually a brilliantly winning game.
When I said this was the game of the round, okay, it had now it's added even more. It's got grandmasters the world over going, what? Huh?
Yeah, I'm
Wait a minute,
confused.
wait. How did he just do that trickery, that magic that was prestidigitation somehow, some way? He figured out how to Zugzwang the guy. Absolutely incredible game. What a terrific fight by Nepo. I mean, we learned so much, and there's more to learn. Sometimes people say, well, you're already a grandmaster. What's there left to learn? You have no idea. This game is so rich. It's an ocean of possibilities, and we're still going to be digging on this one, seeing what was the subtlety here, what were the nuances, break out the table bases, because this is just so complex to try to understand in human terms. And you got 3 GMs in the room still going,
Right.
how did he do
Wow.
that? That was really mysterious.
So, Maurice, let's just ask the engine, because the engines usually, they're not very strong, but after the move King F6, this is the point, this is the key point in my view.
You want
King
this one
F6.
right here? Yeah.
Yeah. How do I hold this position?
And by the way, the engine's giving an evaluation that's off the scale right now. 23.
That's done.
That's done.
That's done.
That's not like maybe I'm a bad engine. That's you are dead. I can see that now. 23 is just too big. When you're still under the 9 points, maybe 7, maybe it sees 5. It sees that it's going to be up material because it's got a queen.
This position is minus 23.
23 minus 23 is what I saw. Okay, now it's. As I was talking, it gave me a minute.
Okay,
I turned around.
This is the position that
and it's now back to 5.
I want to play this one out.
Yeah,
King
now
F6.
it's back to 5. I just want to let you know.
This is where I think Giri loses the game.
Which Which one?
In
This
my
position?
opinion, it's just an opinion right now.
Right.
Are you talking about this position?
After rook h3,
He plays rook h3, king g6, which apparently
basically it's gone.
Well,
And the engines now are way over again, back over 25, but tricked me before saying
okay,
that it was
so let's
it was
not
a
play
lot.
rook h3. Let's not play
Right.
rook h3. Let's play. Okay, can I play the rook anywhere else and does it matter? Can I play like rook a3? Do I have an answer to king g6?
Rook a3, not rook e3 and rook takes e4, but rook a4.
But you play king g6.
And
It's just
with-
dead. I just don't see it.
Can't get the king back to f1.
I just don't see how to get my king to f where I need it.
Right.
Right now, we see that on the right, the actual game position on the right of your screen.
It's about to
the
dead. It's
king
about
is
to be
on,
dead.
and now we're going to see the magical queen d3
D3
move that we learned a long time ago. Alejandro pointed out. Alejandro, you had a story associated with this idea.
It was funny. I saw a very, very similar endgame between Hikaru Nakamura and an amateur player
Yes, nice.
in the Pro Biz Cup of the London Chess Classic.
By the way, sorry, the move has been played. Let's not just let that pass.
Queen D3.
The move, queen d3, is indeed on the board. Beautiful. Look at that on the board now, showing that Nepo completely understood this is the way to win, and he's teaching the world and those of us who are grizzled grandmasters who thought we knew better, this one here.
And it's done. Giri
And
has
it's done
resigned
after this move.
After the move Queen D3
Spectacular,
was found. What a
beautiful
game.
finish.
What a way to start the candidates.
Wow. Finish your story with the biz.
So we're in the Pro Biz Cup.
Right.
Basically this endgame that we have on the board. Queen and pawn against rook and pawn.
Right.
And Hikaru really, really wanted to sacrifice that queen for the rook. He was playing against another strong grandmaster, also an amateur player. And the amateur player kept giving Hikaru's partner the option of taking on e3 and winning the position.
We should explain that
He
in
didn't
this
want-
kind of
He
this
doesn't
kind
want
of
to sacrifice
want
the queen.
in this kind of tandem chess, you're not allowed to confer.
And you're not allowed to.
One
They
another.
they were allowed,
So
but
it's
it was
like
done.
like a sponsor cup.
Right.
You know, you're teamed up with a sponsor, and your sponsor teammate doesn't want to sacrifice the queen. Nice. How did the game end?
Well, Hikaru, luckily for him, his opponent at some point did blunder the full rook, and then his amateur
He
side,
didn't
a
even
full
have to-
rook, that one is good.
That was good. I remember an interview with Garry Kasparov where Garry Kasparov was actually praising somebody and saying that their play was full of content.
Content.
Full of content. Today's game, this game,
Yes,
That
was
was
what I
a
know
story
about.
to have.
full of content.
Their flashy
Wow.
brilliancies, people might say, oh, a nice mating attack, a
struggle.
sacrifice a piece,
Yeah.
check, mate. Ooh, that was beautiful. You might even sacrifice your queen and end in a picturesque mate in 23 moves. But not full of content. Brilliant, sparkling like a diamond, but the games that have the stories, this happened, then this happened,
So
and then
many.
another thing happened. And oh, is he really winning? I think it's a draw. Wait a second. I don't think so. Could we go confirm the table base? Well, let's come back. Oh, how did he get his king over? And at the end, there's a queen sacrifice anyway that wins the game. I mean, this one had so many stories. Absolutely an amazing game to start
Brilliant.
off
Brilliant
these here
work.
candidates.
Twist and
What a
turns
game.
galore.
As we
There
take a
we
look
have it.
at the standings. 2 victories with the black pieces. Wang Hao from China and Jan Nepomniachtchi from Russia are the first victors of this candidates. Round 1, early leaders. What a game we saw between Anish Giri and Jan Nepomniachtchi. It had everything. Preparation, craziness, weak kings, long endgame, a fortress that had to be broken down. What a story. I'm actually going to go back since I can't actually go out of my house. I'm going to go back and be like, where did Giri lose it? Where was the actual losing move?
And the b5, that visual move that Jan came up with as an answer to Queen d3, this is an amazing game. What a start, Maurice.
This is the candidates.
This is the
candidates. And tomorrow we have more fireworks for you. Fabiano Caruana will get his shot with the white pieces against Kirill Alexenko. By far the biggest rating discrepancy in the entire tournament. 150 rating points between them. And Fabiano with the white pieces will definitely be under pressure to win this one. Jan Nepomniachtchi will be white against his compatriot Alexander Grischuk. Meanwhile, Wang Hao, victor of today, will be facing against the loser of that epic game, Anish Giri, with the black pieces. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave will be white against Liren, who's going to have to pick himself back up after losing to his compatriot. Guys, out of words, what a great way to start the candidates.
No question. Maurice, final thoughts of day one's action.
Well, you know, I may sometimes be accused of hyperbole. But this, folks, given the conditions we're living in these times, may indeed be the greatest show on earth. Everybody is watching this as all sporting events have been canceled, but this one, the candidates, and wow, what a way to start. We saw some thrilling games. We definitely saw a dramatic upset in the countrymen playing against each other. Imagine teammates, gold medal compatriots, but they are too fighting to the death. And of course, this brilliant game by Jan Nepomniachtchi, absolutely full of content, great story. What a start. That's just round one. We've got 13 more to go. Well, you've got nothing better to do. We've got nothing better to do. We're going to hold up and watch this incredible show. Looking forward to it. See you tomorrow, guys.
Thank you, Maurice. Wow, that's the way I feel too. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your day with us. We'll look forward to tomorrow's action, same time, same channel, for round 2 of the candidates. Have a good day.
Have a good one. Thank you, guys.